All right. Welcome, everybody. So, what we're doing today is I'm going to have a discussion with Ignacio. He's going to introduce who he is, what it's all about, et cetera, et cetera. As I said in the description here, we're going to be talking about this video with John Vervaeke and Jonathan Peugeot, and there's a lot of angles to go on. And I sort of realize now that um, that our schedule sort of conflicts with Father Eric's stream, but he can't talk anyway. So we get his time. We get to steal it. So without further ado, welcome to Ignacio. How are you doing, sir?
Hello. Doing well. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you just fine. You get these weird crosses over your camera, but we can roll
Oh,
with it.
why do
It'll
I
be
have
fine.
that? Let me.
I don't know. It looks weird. It looks like you're like behind bars. Are you
Oh,
in
weird.
prison?
No, there it is. I don't know why I have.
Perfect. So tell everybody who you are, because most of my audience won't necessarily be familiar with you, and then tell me why or tell everybody why you wanted to do the video.
Well, my name is Ignacio Di Biagio. I'm from Chile, South America, and I'm a Catholic Thomist symbolist, which is a weird thing to see nowadays because for some reason, like scholasticism, it seems to be like a bad thing for symbolism and like symbolic thinking. And my main point, like why I wanted to come here to speak about this, is precisely because that's fake, that's false. So I wanted to clarify that because on the recent video with Sam, Jonathan, and John Vervaeke, they precisely, like at the very beginning of the video, substance ontology is attacked, and then Jonathan just nods like, yeah, like, yeah, like you're right, John. Like to criticize substance ontology, and I and the crazy thing is we're gonna go into that, but the crazy thing is that it's attacked by the very reason why I I don't like the position of John. So I think John's position is what creates what he thinks is created by substance ontology.
Yes, very, very well said. A lot of big words, but they're using a lot of big words.
Yeah.
And so, like, look, I've spent well over 5 years now with John's work with a group of people. We used to be on the John Vervaeke Discord server, the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server. There's a YouTube channel for the Discord server. It's called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord, weirdly enough. So you can see videos that I'm in, talking with Manuel Post about some of John's work. And the way I got into John's work was through his meditation series, which is his best work. Like when he's doing practices with people, is fantastic. And for me, this video was well, first of all, it was extremely hard to listen to. I have my lawyer drafting up papers. We're going to sue you for pain and suffering since you made me sit through that. It was a real shame, right? Because on the one hand, you have John's work, and I'm just going to tell you guys, John doesn't understand the implications of the work he has, which is really sad. But you've also got Jonathan not pushing back on what I would call well-known heresies, just bad use of terminology, the worst possible framing. And I think a lot of this and a lot of the problems in general with conversations like this, I'll have to rope in, Dr. Jordan Peterson and a bunch of, other people. They are, postmoderns. They do not understand or believe in framing. And they may use words like hierarchy, but you'll never hear them describe hierarchy, explain hierarchy, say this is good hierarchy and that's bad hierarchy. And let me tell you, we need that distinction. We need to know who's the good president, who's the bad president, who's got the good electorate, who has the bad electorate, like who at which level is good and bad, And what are those levels? And why does it matter? And no one's talking about that. So they give lip service to ontology. They give lip service to hierarchy. They give lip service to good and bad. They give lip service to a bunch of terms. And then they fail to define them. They fail to differentiate them. They fail to do any kind of discernment. And they just have bad framing, poor framing, no framing in many cases. And that kind of resolves it. And as much as I love Jonathan Peugeot and his work, like this to me was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. Is basically what you have is somebody who was fundamentalist, some form of fundamentalist in Canada, and got traumatized, right? And has been basically denying the Trinity ever since, explicitly, like not like making that up or putting words in his mouth. He's mentioned this before, right? And then you've got Jonathan Peugeot, who is basically still an evangelical. Like he just, like you can say, I go to an Orthodox church, so I'm Orthodox, but like, I'm sorry, like I got to see way more than art that I do, and the fact that I like art, because all of this so-called philosophy, which by the way, it's not philosophy, that's a different video, is nonsense, and it's terrible what they're doing. And where are they? Because this is important framing. They're on a channel, Sam Tiedeman's channel, Transfigured. Right now, I've talked to Sam. I don't hate Sam or anything, but also like he's a non-Trinitarian, right? Like it's an untenable position, right? And that's the channel they're on. And the next video he publishes is about how to like survive if you're quote excommunicated. Sam's a Protestant, and he claimed on a live stream once that he get excommunicated from a Universalist Unitarian church that said we'd still like you to come to communion, his words. And he's on the stream saying he's been excommunicated, and it's like, well, first of all, if you get excommunicated from 3 churches, I know where the problem is, and it's not the churches. Second of all, you can't get excommunicated from any kind of Protestant denomination because they don't have a real communion. And even if they did, they don't have a hierarchy that can throw you out. Now, if a group of people that you attend to anything with throws you out, deal with it. Like you'll be fine. Figure out how you can make yourself better, and maybe that'll make it better. So I don't like the fact that Jonathan is on this guy's channel, right? Because of the message it sends. It gives him a layer of legitimacy. And I don't like, because Jonathan at the outset just kind of accepts all of John's position. And his position is, and I love how they use the word ontology. His position is ridiculous, right? It's just ontology should be able to solve everything. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So what did you see in the beginning of the video, Ignacio, in terms of framing?
So I'm finishing. I couldn't finish because I'm with the kids, and they've been going crazy. But I'm just finishing what I wanted to show you, or what I wanted to show your audience, which is the way. Because I don't want to just criticize. I want to show a bit of a solution to this whole like crazy situation. So on one side you have Jonathan that adheres to like orthodoxy, like Christian or Orthodox Christianity or Eastern Orthodoxy, and then for some reason he unites himself with people like Vervaeke or Peterson, thinking in a way that they are being able to translate Christian theology and Christian ontology to like secular people, you know. Right. So, and then when they do this translation, you start realizing that they're not talking about the same thing, even though they might be using the same terms.
Yes.
So, like that's one of the key things that I like being charitable with Jonathan. I think he just misses that aspect. You know, it's like it passes over his head, because they are using same terms, like logos and all of these things
Right.
that are thrown, or like relationality, and like all these things that we see in Christianity.
Right. Right.
Sacramental icon in this conversation. There were John Vervaeke was talking about icon and communal ontology, like community. So when you're a Christian, you hear that and you go like, oh yes, the most holy Trinity, right? Communal ontology is the
Right.
communion of like Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and the communion of saints and all of that.
Right.
And it's like, nope, he's not
Right.
talking about that at all.
Yeah,
So
I think that's the real issue for me, is there is a gap, and oddly the gap, I guess this is really hard for people to understand. The gap is not in quote language. The gap is in concepts. So
yeah,
when when a Catholic hears hierarchy and they have a pope and they have bishops and cardinals and like on and on and on, right? It's a deep hierarchy in the Catholic Church. They know what that, they have a felt sense because they live it all the time. Basically, they have a felt sense of what that means as a hierarchy of angels. Like they understand that statement. When Peterson says it, when Vervaeke says it, they they have no idea what that means because they've never experienced it or been in it. And then when they use any kind of terminology, it's in a very scientific way. So communion in science is people working together, right? Which is ironic because John, even in this conversation, went down the opponent processing route yet again, right? Which just drives me completely nuts. Oh, you've got that one up. I
yeah.
have that one up.
I just send you the thing to upload. So I'm gonna like quote some things that Vervaeke said, and like he said he said that somebody, Philip, or some of the people that he it was Philip, and I forgot, but he was saying that one of them says that you can't get relations out of relata. Thus, substance ontology is a fundamental mistake.
Mm,
Substance ontology seems to imply even entail a nominalism that gets you into dualism and nihilism. While he was saying this, Jonathan Peugeot was like, you can see him in the video. He was like, yeah, like preach, man, like, amen. And then Vervaeke said, but that he told them back, you can't get relata out of the
right.
relations.
They
And then
reversed it. Yeah.
and then Jonathan was just looking up, you know. And then this is like all these terms that are gonna come about. You're gonna realize that they're just materialistic terms that are
Yeah.
tried. They're trying to. Well, I mean, John is trying to apply it in a spiritual sense, which he doesn't know what spiritual is from what I'm listening. He
Yeah.
said that relations and relata co-emerge in the
Right.
one that is to be understood as common unity. So
Right.
community. And
Right.
you can make one more primordial than the other. This, by the way, I agree with that part, but he's not saying anything at all.
Right.
With everything he has said, he's not saying anything yet. Like I said, Jonathan has a Christian background listening to that. So he fills in the gaps. And every Christian that is listening to Vervaeke, they're filling up the
Filling in the gaps.
gaps
Yeah.
with Christian ontologies. Like, oh
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, yeah, both are important because that like you have persons and they are substantial relations. So the substance of God is to be substantial relations, and
Right.
like, oh yeah, so maybe he's just saying that, and he's not saying that. Like,
Right. But even so, Ignacio, I wanna point out a couple things. So I'll grab this nice Father Eric comment. Peterson only understands hierarchy via lobsters. Right. That's correct. But that's actually a really important point. All of the things you're talking about, and the way that John talks, is all individualistic. It's from the individual out. And he made several logic errors because of that, like so many. And I was just so before you told me about this video, I had watched the first like 6.5, 7, 8 minutes, and I had to stop. Like I was just like, I'm done. This is videos because the initial push is Jonathan just gives it away, which I was not expecting Jonathan to say this, but he said, "This is what I like about you, John. You're bridging these religious concepts with secular language." And I'm like, "No, he's not. No."
No.
And it's weird. It was a weird response to what he said, because what he basically said, in a nutshell, I mean, he uses too many words to do it, was, well, ontology as categories, in other words, scientific ontology, which was ancient Greek philosophy, all science is ancient Greek philosophy, right? That is the way to understand everything about religion, even though Plato would have screamed at you and probably won you in a wrestling match and might not have let you live. Obviously, Plato didn't believe that. You just need to read the Republic and find out all the areas logic, reason, rationality fails in the Republic. They make an appeal to the gods every single time.
They forget to say that they were pagan. They had pagan religions. They were not just people thinking like like
So they're
scientific.
pure philosophers on the road, all by themselves, all alone, right, in the objective material realities. So they were all pagans.
Now there's this one thing that Jonathan keeps saying, that this is why I wanted to share that slide, that the PDF. It's that this is what Vervaeke is proposing, and this is the kind of understanding that Jonathan gives to symbol when he speaks about symbol in the broadest sense. He goes, I use symbol in the etymological sense. He says this all the time, so I hope I'm not like misrepresenting him. He says that all the time. He goes, I use symbol in the broadest sense of the term, like in the etymological sense of the term. And in that sense, it simply means to unite things. Oh, Father Eric saying you guys need to define relata. So relata, this is the simplest definition. It's just a point, a terminus point on a relationship, on a relation. So you have A and B, and they are in relation. A and B are relata. They are endpoints on a relational framework. What they are, what their nature is, who knows? They are just the most generalized way of saying terminus points on a relation. So which is fine. You can have that, right? You can have that in a logical sense. You can have it in the realm of reason. You can have that, like the broadest sense of anything, broadest sense of symbol, broadest sense of distinctions in relation. Great. Now, when you try to do like anchor reality, like actual factual things crashing with each other, and me going to church, looking at a cross, crossing myself, like all these things, then you need an ontological rooting. Ontology is a word that is thrown out a lot. On means being in the essential sense.
Right.
Ontology. So ontos is like the ontology means like the study or the logic of being, the essence of being. That's it.
Right.
That's all it is.
Right, but that's not how sciencey people use it. They use ontology to mean categorization, because to make an ontology, right, and then what they do is they very cleverly swap which ontology they're talking about. Yeah. And then they swap back when they want to, right? Because they want to categorize being so that they have a materialist, because science only works on material, guys. It doesn't work on non-material things at all, right? They want to be able to say with 100% certainty, accuracy, and precision exactly what the world is and call that reality. And I think there's so many problems just in that one framework alone
But,
that
but you can do that. This is the crazy thing. If you have that framework that I gave you, just relata in unity,
right,
then you
right,
can change the relata. You can change the distinctions that are in unity to be whatever. So you can put man and a woman and a dog and a cat and like whatever thing, and you can just, oh, when they are united in some hyper object, right, in some combinatorial explosion in some transjective way, then you have that one thing. That's just an
right,
egregoric thing.
right,
But they, but
right.
they, but nobody will say that, because the reality of the things in relation are being treated as a generalized abstract thing.
Right, but I think so. If we put this up again, like one modification that would just I think make things easier is you have to understand that there's something on the other side of the relata, right? So every relata is a point with something on the other side of it, right? And then those arrows should be bidirectional, and then the relate. But that's not an expression of the relations. It's an expression of the potential relationships,
Yes,
and reality is the
is the
format of those
actuality.
relations in the moment.
In actuality, so here's let me move the so
Yep.
here's like making graphic the problem. So you say relata. So what is the difference between a dog and a cat? Who knows? What is the difference between a man and a woman? Who knows? Creator and creature? Who knows? Father and son? Who knows? Because dog and a cat, they're just relata. Man and woman, they're
Right.
just relata. They're
Right.
not specific substance. They are not a specific anything, because substance ontology is very dangerous, right?
Right. Right.
Now, here's the thing: is that uh, Jonathan, at the same time that he would say that he's okay with Vervaeke's position, he defends this kind of symbolism, which is the most basic form of realism, right? So
Mhm.
hylomorphism in like fancy terms. Hylo means matter, morphe means spirit or form, So hylomorphism is just reality is a composite. That's it. It's a reality is a composite of both. You never have something that is not a composite of both things, or act and potency, spirit and matter. In case of angels, is spiritual act and spiritual potency, because they don't have matter. So no need for subtle bodies. They just have spiritual potency, so spiritual capacity to receive. Um, and this is like classic symbolism. So Jonathan adheres to this again because
Mhm.
he's an Orthodox Christian, right? So he knows,
Right.
because of the the seventh ecumenical council, or the second council of Nicaea, that you have the material icons that are connected to the prototypes, in heaven, blah blah blah. He knows all of that, so he defends this. Now, I went full on crazy here, so I don't know if there's a possibility to zoom in or something, but basically,
Wow.
what we have here is what is missing in Vervaeke, which is that at the very core of like being, as the one who is by his very own act of being or act of existence, he is three persons in relation. Now,
Mm.
is he three relatas in relation? Not like that. You can't just say that. Is because he has said that Trinity is a symbolon. So he
Right.
says Trinity is a symbol in the
Mhm.
in the term in the broad way that Jonathan uses symbol, just many in unity. It's like,
Right.
great, but we need distinctions. We need proper distinctions, because what does it mean to be a father? So it means to be unbegotten, and it means to beget a son, right?
Right.
If you don't beget a son, how can you be a father, right? And if you're not the unbegotten, then it means that you're the son of someone, right? So to be the ontological anchor within God, you need unbegottenness, begetting a son, right? And then the Holy Spirit being the spiration. Spiration is a fancy word that means breathing. That's it. It's the breathing forth, right, of the Father and the Son. Now, here's where with Jonathan we will get like a bit of issues, because he's an Eastern Orthodox, so they deny this reality, because they deny the filioque, right? Which
Hmm.
is which simply means the Father's breathing forth who He is, essentially, right? So He's breathing forth God,
Right.
Himself,
Hmm.
and then He begets the Son, and the Son is doing the same. He's breathing forth who He
Right.
is, and who He is the same, essentially, than the Father. So it's the same one Holy Spirit. It's one common
Right.
spiration. So that way of anchoring the like the source of reality, it's not the same as saying you have three relata, that are relating. It's like, what
Right. Right.
what's
That would be insane. Well, and I think too. I wanna go back to a couple of things. I think on this particular slide here, right? I want to see if you agree with me here.
uh-huh.
So that very inner thing between the two arrows, that's reality.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. I
Yeah,
thought, I thought, I thought we
that's
were on the
how
same page.
traditionally every iconography with the West and the East and every they do
Yeah,
that thing is called mandorla or vesica Pisces, very new
right,
agey.
right,
Used by
right. No,
very,
no, and it's used too in the occult all the time,
yeah.
right? And they do various things with that. But I think it's very important to understand that what that means technically, right? From a like just take the picture at face value. We won't get into what's heaven, what's earth, right? We won't get into
Yeah.
that nonsense because it's not necessary. Like you can
No.
make this as complicated as you want. Like you can grab a microscope and we can go down and down and down and then you can take a picture of the first atom if you want. We can do discussions forever. Okay, but that's not you don't need that as a human. You just need the human graspable thing. So if you think of reality as being anchored or grounded by the earth, right? And reaching up or knitting together the thing above, and that is not a stable process, because a lot of the problem is the way with the way Vervaeke talks in particular is he's talking about like reality is pre-existing, it's right there, and we just right because in science they're very objective material reality. We have objects, there's material, and that's what reality is, right? And that's a space that they judge from the world, right? It's a godlike position.
Just so everybody knows, I just laughed because somebody said free Nelson Mandorla.
Anselman. Yeah, the Scottish. They're like that. Can't trust the Scots. Um,
So let me let
yeah,
me let me let me push. So the bottom part is showing creation here on this one.
yeah,
Cru- uh, this is the other part that they're missing by destroying substance ontologies. Like they just hate Aristotle, right? We hate Aristotle. We hate the scholastics. They are rationalist people that they were trying to make the theology a thing of reason, and that's it, right? But
right,
the thing is that you you do have a difference between creator and creature. What is the difference? This is pretty basic apophatic theology, which Jonathan would agree with me, which is one is unlimited and
right,
bounded,
right,
and the other one is limited and bounded. So the unlimited one is sharing his very being with the limited one. And the limited one, the one that is a limitation, can only receive
Right.
limited, like limitly,
Right.
whatever comes from above, from God. So
Right.
every limitation, every limitation, essentially, it's a different substance, which is pretty like Genesis 1. Each kind, right?
Right.
Every little different kind is a specific limitation to receive. Is a limitation in mode and degree.
Yep.
So that's why you can have a difference between cat and dog. Like you have a
Yep.
substantial difference between cat and dog. Now, here to show you how insane is to think that substance it's somehow eliminating the capacity for relation or relationality is that every being that exists. This is from Aristotle. So some people, even uh, Father Eric said at the beginning about Aristotle. Uh, this is Aristotelian categories, the 10 categories of being. So you have substance, that's one of the categories. So it's not the only one, as Vervaeke tends to point. He's like, he thinks that substance ontology means you're like isolating things by themselves as if they are not like just some standing alone things. No,
That's ontology in science. That's exactly what scientific ontology is. So that makes sense that they think that. Yeah.
yeah, but Aristotle never said that, and St. Thomas Aquinas never said that. So every being has substance, which it's a limitation in respect to God, right? Specific kind of limitation, specific kind of nature, and then that it always has quantity, quality, relation, a position, a where, a state or habit, a when, an action, and a passion. So I give an example here. Uh, well, here I'm just showing that this is very symbolic. This is a funny thing. This is all like Aristotelian and Thomistic, and I'm showing you. I did it. I made it symbolically sound just to show you that they are not destroying the symbolic structure. Act and potency, male, female, masculine, feminine. You know, like giver, receiver. They are not destroying that, right? So act and potency. That's not destroying the symbol, the symbolic structure. The substance is a limitation, right? So a passive receiver from God. Now, here's the funny thing. Remember that I showed you in the past one that every being has a substance and they have this all these other things like a where, a position. So I made certain connections here just to show you like, okay, can something be related by quality? So they can have the same quality. Yeah. Can they be related in quantity? Right. Yeah. Can they be related in position? Yeah. In where, like where are there are the things? Yeah. Can they be related in a when? Yes,
Mm.
we are related in a when right now. Right. Can they be related in like all these possible ways? Yes. Now, can there be a relation of action and passion so I can act upon something and that something can receive in a certain way? Yeah, it happens with air, for example, right? I'm breathing something that it's
Right.
outside of me and it's acting upon me and I have a passivity, a passion to receive that. Yeah. So is Aristotle destroying relationality from substance ontology?
No.
So that kind of straw man of substance ontology, it's quite uh, it's quite dangerous. It's very dangerous. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we can stop for a bit on this, so we can like ruminate on this, and then I'm gonna go to the next aspect, which is our encounter with these things.
Yeah, I think let's stop for sure. And just and take a pause, and then I want to talk a little bit too about where this confusion comes in. Right. Why is it that Jonathan doesn't see that John is not talking about the same thing, even though he's using exactly the same language and exactly will say the right way? Um, and I think that is like that to me is really revealing. And there were several things that popped out. So I want to tell you, Najra, because I haven't told you yet. So uh, what I did was I grabbed the transcript and I threw it into the AI. I've gotten very good at using these AIs now. And and look, I mean, we can whine about this all day long, but I'm an actual practitioner with 20 years of AI experience. So there's that. Right. B, I'm like a technologist. Like I understand all of this technology at a level that you probably not going to meet somebody else, right, ever. Uh, I've built these things from scratch, but more importantly, John himself at the end of this conversation goes on and on and on about how AI is changing into this thing and morphing into this thing and has all these wonderful qualities and properties. Okay, well, I wonder what AI has to say about your conversation, right? And so AI had a bunch of interesting things to say if you asked it a few interesting questions, um, and totally fair questions. Now, for me, the issue is not so much about that, because I have, to be fair to AI, had a lot of problem with AI and definitions and framing, because it can't do those things, which is interesting. It won't use definitions and it can't do framing. Um, but when you listen to what John says, you can understand the issue very well, and you can understand Jonathan's confusion in a way. So one of the things they're talking about, and this is in like the first 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes of this conversation, is John is claiming that things co-emerge from community. And the thing about that is that is technically false. So I think that there's I guess it's a reasonable confusion around that issue. It looks to us, if we come into a community, as though things are co-emerging or something, which I find that the worst possible way to talk about anything. And since I have now written a book on community, I'm going to go, no, nothing emerged, because communities have a starting point. And that starting point imparts momentum to the group. And what emerges comes out of that momentum. And it is not co anything, because they're hierarchical. And one or more people are running the group, holding the group together, and pushing the group forward. You can see this all over YouTube with people who don't manage their conversations well. When they have multiple speakers, they won't pick who speaks next. And then everybody gets confused, and there's a little kerfuffle. And, even relatively large YouTubers who are relatively professional, like Critical Drinker. I love Critical Drinker's channel. He does movie reviews. He falls into this still all the time. Paul Vanderklay does this all the time. It's like, no, you're the leader. You started the channel, you started the stream, you picked the guests, right? Or you allowed them to come in. You need to say who goes first, second, and third. Like, you just need to do that. And so that's not a co-emergence. That's an emergence from somebody taking a responsible leadership role, making sure that things run smoothly so that the guests are comfortable and the audience has a better time. And when you fail to do that, you break everything. So this idea that it's just social, it's co-emergence, it only comes if you start in the middle. And I have a video, of course, on middle out thinking, on navigating patterns, a wonderful video. It's a very old video, right? John, Jordan Peterson, a bunch of people are middle out thinkers. They are starting Sam Harris. Sam Harris starts all of his thinking, and he's doing all of his talking from my consciousness is the beginning of the world. And that's his perspective. He doesn't pay any homage. None of these guys pay any homage to what came before. Like they may say like, well, I really like Plato and Aristotle and blah, blah, blah. and they may even do well, they really built a foundation. That's not the beginning. Like, I mean, like, I don't understand why that's your beginning. Your beginning is not people who wrote stuff down that you read later, but in a poor translation. Like, come on, right? The beginning has to be way before that, and it has to include all things. If it's that, we'll just use a random word that I'm going to pick for no reason. Creation might describe that well. That had to come from somewhere. That's the starting point. Like,
Yeah,
why?
but
They have a hard time with this.
the thing is, this is something that I've been trying to push out uh, so that we understand a bit more the problem with naming, right? So Lynn is talking about the problem with naming. Most people nowadays are nominalists, so which means that they think the name of the thing is somehow like giving its reality. So they forget about the conceptual realm of names. They forget that words are pointing to concepts. They just don't even take that into account. Now,
well, hold on, Ignacio. I want to point out a few things. So, would you say that a name is a relata?
a good name.
Yeah. Well, we'll say a good name. Yeah, that's a good,
I mean,
because that's where I'm going next.
I mean, relata is just like I said, it's just a point. So sure.
Right. So I like your statement of the problem with nominalism, but I think you're vastly understating the problem, right?
No,
So,
but I'm gonna go somewhere else.
well, let me just point out one other thing, and then I'll let you continue. It's not just that they have this problem with names. It's that they think that all reality consists of names, and conversely, that all names are in reality. So they make up names all the time. John is famous for this. John Vervaeke does this all the time. They make up names, often for concepts that have much better names already. It's just they don't know,
Yeah,
or they don't like those names.
yeah.
So
I
that
mean,
I
the
wanted to
whole
point out the dual problem. It's on both sides. That's why everyone's making up words lately. And look, you're not going to find too many people that make up as many words like in a day as I do, because I think this whole thing is hysterical. I've thought it since I was basically a very young boy. Like, this is funny that you can just and the other day there was a problem in the garden, and Sarah's like, this and that and this, and what do you think? And I'm like, I'm not a gardenologist, because that was my new word for the day. And and I just, I play with this because it's all nonsense and it's silly and it's fun. To be fair,
yeah,
people yourself usually laugh when I do something retarded and completely stupid with naming, right? To make a point, like, because I don't know anything about gardens. I'm not a gardener, right? So
right.
it's important to realize it goes both ways. They think that because somebody says something, that's representative of something in reality for sure, and they just have to figure it out. Now it's a new puzzle for them, right?
Yeah,
So anyway,
absolutely.
continue with your point. I just needed to make
So
that point real quick.
yeah, it's fine. So the thing is that they speak about like metaphysics, meta ontology, meta whatever. And you have pointed this out before to me that they use meta to mean outside, but I think they mean meta to mean big, to mean a lot of things in a net, in a network. That's what they mean. So in this conversation, they were supposed to speak about spirits, right? They were supposed to speak about the spiritual world. Now, the spiritual world is simple. It's not complex. It doesn't get more complex. It gets simpler because it's
Right.
the more spiritual, the more all encompassing is the thing, the more capacity it has to act upon things, right? The complexity was here.
Right.
Yeah. Big physics, exactly. This is like they think big physics. So it's like, what is an angel? Oh, an angel must be this like this like hyper object, which is composed of thoughts of people in like certain situations and countries and concepts and ideas, like all this combined and
Right.
exploding at the same time, causing
Right.
co-emerging a thing to be, and that can be uh, understood as an angel.
Right.
No,
But they're looking up
no,
from down below, right? And because they're looking up from down below, and they don't acknowledge up at all, by the way. They think everything co-emerges. They think they're looking side to side. They think they're looking on a flat plane, right? But what they see, and this is actually this is covered, like this has been talked about before, in Flatland. It's a great book. Um, you know, whereas Jonathan understands there was a creation, all this stuff was there. And then part of that creation are things that are bigger than us. And spirit is part of the thing that's bigger, or above is actually the correct term. It's above us, right? But it also comes down and pervades us, or informs us, or allows us to be. Like part of our being is spirit, right? And that would be the large O ontology being, a large O ontology being ontology, right? So that's part of our being is spirit that comes down, it emanates down onto us, and we can't understand it because when we look up, we can't see the whole thing because it's bigger than we are. And John doesn't seem to understand that, but Jonathan understands it that way, but John doesn't understand it that way. That's why he says emerge, emerge, emerge all the time. Never talks about emanation.
well, that's why I said that I think what happens with Jonathan is that he fills in the gaps with whatever generalized term that Vervaeke uses.
Yep.
Uh,
They all do.
Jonathan just fills in the gaps, and he's like, "Oh, you're speaking my language, right? You're speaking my
Yep.
my lingo." But I'm fixing the
Fixing the
slides.
deck.
Yeah, so you can have it. So you can have them have some images more. Let me remove this one because that
Well,
one.
we'll get all the images. I'll grab them all from you after this, and we'll get them all up on the markofwisdom.org website at some point. And I'll
Nice.
put, I'll put a post to the video and all that nonsense, when we're done. So if you want the slides, I will try to get them to you on the website. I think too, part of the issue here, Ignacio, is that, they really like Vervaeke's format because they see him moving closer to these concepts. But when Vervaeke talks, he's very clearly saying, I want to bring this all under little o ontology categorization and the rules of science. And I don't know why people can't hear that. But to me, it's abundantly clear that that's what he's talking about. Are these
Look,
slides ready?
yeah, that's ready.
Okay, let me put them up.
So I showed you guys that. Now we can see it closer, right?
There we go.
So
Yeah.
so you have God. This is what you're talking about, creation, right? On one side you see creates ex nihilo, from nothing, or ex nihilo, sustains and composes. This is very important. When people nowadays they say create, they don't understand that they're talking about composition. Composition is one way of speaking about creation, right? So I can have
Right.
whatever weird thing, like a cup in another cup, and then I can do like a thing, and then I'm composing. This is symbol in the broadest sense. It just means composite, to put things together. So I composed this one new thing. So I created, right? I created this thing that didn't exist before. Well, but
It emerged from two parts.
it emerged.
Amazing.
It's emerging. This new thing emerges. So that thing is called composition.
Right.
Am I sustaining the being of that thing? No. I'm not sustaining the being of that thing.
Right.
Because I can't do that. I don't have the ontological power to give that thing beingness, essence,
Right.
like
Right.
of existence. I can't do that.
You
Who's
can't breathe life into it? Why
yeah,
not?
yeah, I am. I just breathe and then that's it. Like the pagan, like the pagans, right? You just breathe
Yeah.
and then they have power. So and then creation out of nothing. It means there's no composition. God is
Right.
not composing anything.
Right, but you have to start there, right? You have to start from the creation in order to get to the composition, and
Yeah,
they're all talking about composition without talking about the starting point. And Anselm, I know I've probably said this before on my pirate live streams on Fridays, but I try not to use the word create except for one event, right? And then what we do is we're co-manifesting, and we're the co in the manifesting. It can be thought of as two ways because they are not identical scientifically, but they are identical symbolically. You can say you're co-creating with the creator or God, right? Or you can say you're co-creating with the creation, right?
right.
Which if you have two cups, you're doing both, but whatever, because you're doing both, either works, right? That's a co-manifestation. So
Yeah,
you're taking existing created order and you are manifesting it with the cooperation, right? To
yeah,
RJ's excellent point here, you just said cooperation,
exactly.
right? Of the creation and therefore by extension of the creator. And probably, right? One way to think about art is, oh, the creator put this idea into my head that I could co-manifest creation this way or compose creation this way. And that composition is a co-manifestation. And I think
Yeah,
that's an easier differentiator to
but
understand this with.
and you see that on one side I put this pure act because actus purus is a term that everybody hates in this circle, right? God is not pure act. It's like, so
Right.
he has passive potency, so he can be perfected? No. So he's pure act, period. He's unlimited actuality. He's the one who is. That's just Exodus, right? that's just the name of God. So he is by his own act of existence, by his very own act of being who he is. This is why we say that his act of being, energy, energeia means act. So his
Mm,
one act, it's to be him. That's it.
right.
So you cannot have multiple activities within the Godhead. That's why we don't accept the energy's essence distinction in God. We accept it between God and creatures, right?
Right.
Because the creature, it's it's by participation. So it's the creature that is limiting the act of God through their essence, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that limitation becomes a created act or energy,
Exactly.
right? So that
Exactly.
energy, that energeia, it's distinct from the essence of the creature, which is just limitation in respect to God. In that sense, you have essence energy distinction, not in God. You can't do that in
Right.
God.
Right.
Very, very
Right.
problematic.
Well,
And
that's
here,
that's the other aspect that Vervaeke was talking about that Peugeot kind of accepted without pushing back on, which I thought was horrible. Um, it's a very flat, equal world with Vervaeke. It's very horizontal, and so he kept equating things and making them equal, and then saying co this and co that, and emergence, right? Nothing ever came first, and nothing was ever more important than any other thing, and that's a real problem because that's not where we are. We are in the land of hierarchy with the
yeah,
hierarchical lobsters. Like it's
yeah,
like you can't talk about the world that you inhabit as a human being as everything's equal. It's this equality doctrine. It's got to be some kind of known heresy. Um, that's killing everything because everybody keeps equating things together that are not
well,
equal at all, and
but
then
that's
they have no starting point, right? There's no nothing is at a starting point.
But this is this. So
Yeah,
this is what. So what is this one symbol? What is this one composite? Oh, it's a
yeah,
composite of relata, relata, relata. What is that? Oh, it's just this thing that came out of all this relata. But you said that you need relata in relation. Oh yeah, because the relata with in relation made emerge something. You didn't
right.
say anything right now. You're not saying anything. So you this is the crazy thing is that Vervaeke said that substance ontology creates a dualism and leads to nihilism. How so? I would say what he's proposing does that. Because when you say just you have relata and relation that are nothing and have no ontological difference and have no anchoring, none of it has like causal power over the other or nothing, then you have a flat thing, like you always say, that flat reality in which what is above, what is below, what is you don't
Right.
know, like what is the
You don't.
difference,
You
creation,
can't know.
so you can have this pantheistic ontology, you
Well,
can
you
have
have to.
it's like queer ontology.
Yeah, but you have to. Like you can't end anywhere. You can stay stuck on the path to getting to the end result, but the only possible end result is that. And so
Yeah.
with that, I want to take an opportunity to show people something. So John kept talking about these dichotomies. But if you look up what dichotomy means, dichotomy basically means to place in opposition to two things in opposition to one another. Well, what does oppose mean? Oppose is something that you, the observer, the person, does to the world. In other words, nothing in creation is opposed to any other thing in creation because they all have a right relationship somewhere, somehow. That doesn't mean they're in the right relationship right now, but it means there is a right relationship for them, right? And this gets into the, but there's poisonous snakes, and if they bite you, you die. And how is it? It's like, oh my goodness, dumbest arguments ever. So when I ask the AI, I say, can you tell me about the contradictions that John Vervaeke makes? It didn't have speaker information. So the fact that it was able to extract that is kind of cool. Right? That John Vervaeke makes in the discussion, it came up with 12 of them for an hour and 44 minutes, whatever the heck it is, 43 minutes conversation. 12 contradictions with only three speakers. To be fair, Sam didn't talk much. Although, to be fair, when Sam did, he also contradicted himself almost immediately. So one of them is the first one the AI listed was called the dichotomy contradiction. Claims to eliminate dichotomies while creating new ones. This is the AI saying this, right? Like I already knew all this, but whatever. The AI said this. Argues that modernity's dichotomies, mind, body, subject, object, fact, value, must be deconstructed, which is impossible. You can't deconstruct anything. Don't be stupid, right? Because they lead to nihilism, but then creates his own stark dichotomy. Substance ontology, bad, leads to nihilism, versus relational ontology, good, solves everything, right? There's Ignacio's core point right there, right? Says, as long as we're in this grammar, right? This is a quote, right? Dot, dot, dot. We can't see the sacred, right? But this itself is a dichotomic claim about good versus bad frameworks. So even the AI picked up on this like very easily. And this is the AI John loves that's going to do whatever and go off. And I mean, the first time he talked about AI on his channel was so funny. I'm like, dude, that's actually the plot of the movie Her, which is an old movie by that point. And I'm like, well, thanks for recounting the plot of a movie. I rather liked that movie, by the way, but not for the reasons other people did probably. But yeah, I mean, his understanding of AI is ridiculous. But like, I have a list. That was the
But
first one, by the way.
if you notice the problem with his ontology uh, lies in the very fact that he as Noah said uh, earlier, mega physics. It's mega physics, and like you said, he's starting from the vantage point of a composite being, which is us, right? Which is, it's fine if you do that in the biblical way. In the
Yeah.
biblical way, you speak symbolically. This is what Jonathan would say, right? So I speak of above, below, because that's where
Yeah.
I'm standing. I have things that are above and things that are below.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but now, the thing is that if you take that approach, that biblical approach, what it's above, so what is spiritual, it's not just more complex, it's
Right.
simpler,
Right.
right? So you have
It's
star,
less material. Right.
it's
It's
less
less and less
material,
material.
it's less and less material, it's more simple, it's more like fixated, you know. Uh, it's all things like light, air,
Right.
all these things. So from that symbolical, or I don't know what word to use, but that symbolic way of seeing reality from your vantage point,
Yeah.
that's great. That's what the Bible does all the time. So, for example, what comes first, the sun or light? Well, go outside, right? And then at the very beginning of the day, you will see light. Then you're gonna see the sun, right? Then you're gonna see the sun rise. So of course you get light first, and then you get the sun to occupy that place.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but but John is not doing that. He's having this ontology of big complex things united. Big, very complex things just exploding into emergent things. Now, here's where I see a connection between Jonathan and John, which I find problematic, is that because Jonathan, he's not a metaphysician and he's not a theologian or none of that, and he takes this approach of symbolism, this broad approach of many becoming one,
Yeah.
is that through that you can create just whatever you want. You can
Yeah.
make a composite. You can make a composite, a symbol, a
Right.
composite of your thought. Let's say you have Mark's thought, Ignacio's thought, RJ's thought, Father Eric's thought, and those thoughts united can be like a hypostatic thing, right?
Right.
It's an actual being, right? That is your thoughts plus my thoughts plus
Right.
this is another thing, and then substance ontology is not anchoring this reality. So substance ontology must be wrong, because we do see that if we are in conversations between you and Father Eric and RJ and me, there is one specific thing that it's not you, it's not you, it's not you. It's this one new thing that came about through the relation of all of us.
Right.
And
It's the thing that's being pointed to outside of all of us, or we'll say independent of not only each person, but independent of the grouping of us. It's the whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. And Ixnon here, the symbol solves combinatorial explosiveness. Yes, how does it do that though? It's so, and this is where they don't. This is where they freak out. It does it without math. It does it without science. It does it without a conscious, rational, logical, reasonable set of tools, which leads me into this. So you were saying like you were struggling with this symbol word. What we have is the knowledge engine model, and in the knowledge engine model, you'll notice on the side here the poetic navigation, right? And so we've sort of pinned this to the right brain, right? This is a relabeling of John's 4 Ps. It came at there's a lot of work in this. A bunch of people worked on it, Manuel Post and Andre Jones and myself and a bunch of people, right? And so the poetic way of informing the world, because these are types of information, is the thing that gives you a sense for symbols. But if you are, say, autistic, you're only using the left brain processing of left brain processing tools, which are propositional information and procedural information, right? And so you cannot understand symbolism correctly. You can make relationships with symbolism. You can reduce all relationships to what you're calling symbol, but that's not what symbol is, because it can't be reduced. It is the thing that does the reducing, right? It's completely backwards way of thinking about it. And
But
that,
it
I think,
doesn't.
is
But
what's
it does
missing.
it in. But it does it in a specific way, and this is where,
Right.
if we can go to the slides that
I'll go back.
I'm gonna.
You want to go to yours?
Yes, I'm gonna
There you go.
go farther. Here, I'm gonna go into all of this because it has a connection with the Virgin Mary, the Most Holy Virgin Mary, and like Immaculate Conception. There's a whole, like, many things that if you want to really anchor symbolism ontologically, you need all of this. So, uh, yes, great. So you have the human, right? Over there is the human, and it says that the human encounters reality, and then reality is informing that human, right? I'm going to explain what I mean by reality and all of this. Then, from that reality, the human abstracts a concept, and from that reality, the human creates, and this is composes, right? He composes a word and composes a symbol. That word and that symbol is composed of the concept, right? The mental concept of the person, and a material reality. This is where symbolism needs to start, like, chilling out a bit and being like, dude, yeah, heaven and earth, which heaven? My head heaven? God's divine ideas heaven? Angels heaven? Which one? You can't just say heaven and earth in that vague way. In the symbol and the word that it's composed is composed of a mental word, right? So your conception, your abstraction from something, and a specific material thing. And you make that composition of a heaven and earth, right? My heaven and earth. Now, words tend to be compositions of many heavens, so many heads, many people thinking, and they become a conventional thing, right? Grab certain matter and put it together into a sound or into a specific word. Now, this is the mapping. This is a Thomistic symbolic mapping of how that happens. I'm
Can you
gonna go.
zoom in on it? Yeah, there we go.
So the four little, like, mushroom looking things. I'm 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 just I'm just
I
being
love it.
funny. I wanted to keep that symbolic so you can see. So you have Earth. This would be reality in the sense that I was speaking. What is it that you encounter? So you encounter reality with your five senses. So you have touch, taste, vision, hearing, smell. That's how you encounter reality. You don't have more than that. This is not speaking biologically, this is speaking anthropologically, like philosophical anthropology. So how your biological senses do this, I don't care, because I'm not a biologician.
Excellent.
um, so you start abstracting, like grabbing onto these things,
Mm.
really, right? Because we
Yeah.
are realists, we're not nominalists. We're actually encountering reality out there, and we are abstracting, like absorbing, kind of thing, up. And then up we have four um four internal senses, right? Let me see if here I made the, yeah, here I didn't make the correction of the estimative sense. So we have four internal senses. One is memory, another is imagination, the other one is common sense, which is usually uh, treated as perception, like in modern terms. And then we have the cogitative sense. Here I put stimative sense, but that's not correct. That would be in animals. In the human, we have the cogitative sense. right? So I'm gonna explain very fast these do. Common sense is like the symbolic one. It's grabbing things and putting it together. It's just uniting things. Common, uniting things. How is it doing it? Is doing it in a specific order. How does it order it? Through the cogitative sense, which is the sense that is seeing the intentions of the beings that is receiving information from. So if you receive like a wolf, a cat, or a tree, whatever, you're gonna like pre-rationalize the thing. You're gonna like organize the thing in a specific way. Now, how is it gonna be anchored in you? How is it that it's gonna stay in you? Through memory, right? And this again, biologically, you can speak of like neurons and like dendrites and whatever, but it's memory. It's just grabbing, putting them, anchoring in one specific place, right? And then you have imagination, which is like how you access those things. So you can remember a smell, right? And you go like you have this internal sense of imagination of how that smell or how that looks or all of that. Now, all of that together creates what it's called a phantasm, a ghost, right? Like a ghost thing inside of you. This is like because we're composite beings, so we have this composite of spiritual aspect and material aspect. So the phantasm is a mix, it's like a half material and then half spiritual, right? Now you have spiritual capacities. This is not your material capacity. So this is very important. You don't think with your brain. You think with your soul, with your spirit, right? Phantasm of the Opera here. So all the things that you abstracted from the sensible, material, particular world, right? Your encounter with reality. Now you have an active intellect, an agent intellect that is like throwing that up there, so that you can think, so you can
Right.
grapple with this thing actually. And then from grabbing that, you abstract, you make a mental word or a mental verb. This is what is called a concept.
Right.
So you give birth to a concept. That concept is not a specific word. That
That's right.
concept, it's not a specific word. This is like, we need to understand this.
Right.
And now once we have that concept, you check back with your phantasm. So you go, let's say, I see a furry thing, it's barking, has tail, and I think about it, I grasp the thing, I grasp the essence of the thing at the mode of the intellect, and I go dog, and then I check back, it does this conversion to the phantasm. It goes back and it goes, yeah, it matches. So my concept, and the sensitive image that I have, they match. Great. That's an adequation with your spirit, your intellect, and factual material reality. That's truth, right? That's a true thing. You just grasp reality. Now, from that, from that is that we make up a word, we make up
Yep.
a symbol that helps us go back to the thing. It's like an
Right.
anchoring thing. It's like, oh, you remember dog, DOG? That means that concept. Let's say you go to China. Let's say you go to Japan. Let's say you go to Chile and you say dog. Nobody knows what that is because the
Right.
word dog, the DOG thing, it's just a convention, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
simply a convention that was created to point at a mental word, at a concept. And then the concept is the one pointing back at reality.
Right. And then the symbol in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, would be bigger than the concept. And in some ways bigger than the reality, because it allows you to link the concepts to the words, to the things that you can't, that are in the concept that the word cannot capture, right? And also back to reality and to other concepts, which is
Yeah,
where symbols really come into play. It's like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
oh, which, but, and I'm gonna move back to my slide real quick because I think it. Let me get rid of yours. Sorry. Uh, so I want to just sort of move this up. So for us, we have particular knowledge and intuitive knowledge that are different ways uh, of really grasping the world, right? And they come out of, and there should be two, arrows here, basically, right? One comes out of left brain, one comes out of right brain. And this is how we understand the world, right? So we take these four aspects from our perspective, our perspectival understanding. There's a lot more there, but we've only ever done this slide. So, right, which is the four things. They cooperate, they use cooperative processing, and then the same thing happens up to this type of particular versus intuitive knowledge. And that actually is really important because what it means is that you need something to tie these things together. But the tying together, and this is where it gets tricky. If you do the tying together the way John Vervaeke does it, it has to be arbitrary. We're back to the postmodernism. You can take any two things, make a symbol out of them, and call it a day. But actually, intuitively, we know which things symbolically go together, when and how. So you can say a dog goes symbolically together with a donkey in that they are both good guard animals. No, really, donkeys are good guard animals, right? But you could also link a dog and a cat with a different symbol, by the way, because it has to be a different symbol, right? As house pets, right? But you can't say, oh, well, we can link dog and donkey and we can link dog and cat, and therefore we can watch a symbol that does both. No, you can't, right? And so there's a correctness to symbolism, and that's where people get lost. And that's what I saw with a lot of the language creation book clubs, is these people would just use symbolism and they just cram things together the same way they do
Yep.
in language. I mean, John does this in language all the time. He just takes two words, smashes them together, says, I have
Yeah.
a new concept,
It must
right?
be.
And then
It
he
must
likes
be a
the
reality.
symbolism.
No,
Right.
no. The thing with symbolism is that here is this. In this
You
particular
got to
image.
zoom that one in. No one's going to be able to read that.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix it. No worries, but I'm gonna explain it. So at the top it says God subsisting by His own act of existence, and then He creates and sustains different things. So those five things are air, water, food, human, and the sun. I just put a bunch of different examples. So, and it says that water hydrates and refreshes and cleans the human and the food, and
Right.
then the human drinks the
Mm-hmm.
water. The human eats the food nurtures, gives bodily sustenance to the human, and then the human breathes air, and air provides oxygen, blah, blah, blah. Sun gives vitality, and all these
Right.
things. You have all these different like networks, right? Now, the important thing here is that every little thing it's relating with the other because of the way they are, their nature. It's because of their nature. Symbolism has to be rooted in nature. That's how you know what symbols are correct or wrong, right? So you can't say, oh, this fire is freezing me. It's like, no, like that's just stupid. But a postmodern would do that because they'll be like, yeah, I think I just put, like you said, I just put these two things together. They must be something.
Right.
No, it has to be rooted in reality because the
Exactly.
symbol needs to participate in 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 the aspects of reality that it's signifying. It can't just be arbitrary. Now, this nobody's gonna know, and this I'm gonna write a book to explain this. So, it's no, this is just my mind how it works. So, This I'm gonna just explain this very quickly, just to show that not every composite it's the same. This is why flattening relationality through just relata uniting, it's very bizarre, right? Because you have a symbol, you can have a symbol as a human being, right? A human being is a composite, so you're a symbol. You can have a symbol like a dog. A dog is a composite being, is a symbol, right? But the human has a rational soul. The dog doesn't have a rational soul. So they are not the same kind of symbols, right? Now, every person has a like a common sense, right? So you have a
Yep.
perception, you have phantasm. That phantasm is a symbol also. This is many coming into one. But your perception symbol, your as a human, you like you being a human and being a symbol, and your perception being a symbol are not the same. And then you can have symbols and composite as a cultural construct, right? So you have like words
Right.
that are conventional conventions that come about through like many people in time and history, like people thinking in communion and blah blah blah. You have cultural constructs. Is that the same kind of symbol than a human, than a dog? And now you can have a symbol as a composite art. So somebody creating a piece of art, like
Right.
making a cross. Is that the same kind of symbol than the human, than the perception, blah blah blah? And now you can have a being like an angelic being, which is a composite of heaven and heaven, right? Spirit and spirit. And or you have the most holy Virgin Mary. You have the sacraments. You have Jesus Christ. How do you deal with the specifics? You can take out the the map. How do you treat this in specific manners if you don't have ontological distinctions between them, and you just say symbol, it means smushing things together.
Right.
Can they be smushed together? Like, can be they mush together in whatever way?
And it's the opposite. It's the thing that holds thing together because it's bigger than the things that basically it's representing, or not even representing, able to represent. So one of the things Manuel Post and I did early on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server, we had this, and I believe that discussion's still up on that YouTube channel. We had this discussion about how symbols work and their importance, but one of the conclusions we came to is the symbol is something that multiple entry points. So, like for example, you go to a church, there's a crucifix there. If there isn't a crucifix there, is it really a church? Right. So you go to a church, you've got a crucifix. If you're a priest and you're at the bottom of the crucifix and you're contemplating how Jesus must have suffered on that cross, that's your way in. Where that
Yeah.
leads for that person, I have no idea, right? Because I'm not them, right? But if I go and I, sit at kneel at the base of the cross or whatever, and I contemplate that symbol, I'm probably not going to enter there because that's not where I'm at,
So
right? But I can enter, and maybe I can even go to a similar place as a priest in the entering, but it has different entry points and different exit points. It is a conduit to move
yeah.
up and down these concepts. You can come in multiple different points, and you can come out at multiple different points. But the symbol is so much bigger than all
Yeah.
of the things that are, quote, related to it, or potentially related to it, because the symbol only works through relation. That's why you can downgrade a symbol to a sign, which is just a flat one-to-one representation, right? You can
Yeah.
downgrade it. That's you doing that, though. That's not a function of the thing outside of you. The thing outside
Yeah.
of you that is symbolic has a way to accommodate you and let you in, and then take you somewhere, or allow you to go somewhere, and then take you out, or connect a bunch of concepts together. And you
Yes.
can't do that with a sign, but that's something you impose on the world. That's not the world.
Now, this one thing that it's a bit problematic. I mean, it's not a bit; it's very problematic. So, Science in the Dust says that I am collapsing the relational element. Here's why I'm not doing it, right?
Yeah, you're
Um,
doing the opposite. But yeah,
because the rooting is in God.
right,
Because the rooting that I'm doing is in God, then in God you have relation and distinction properly united together in one divine essence. So all that I'm doing is that I'm expanding from that, from revelation, from creation, and from actual experience, all the networks that are created, and how you can have mixtures of
right,
all the different aspects. So you can have, let's say, you can have a cultural construct of an idea, right? You can have that, like it happens with cultures. Like you have people, when you say how are you, this is not, they don't mean the same in every country. Like in Japan, genki desu ka means like, it means about your energetic state. Like how are you, like essentially, like your powers, like how it's very different than how are you in English, or cómo estás in Spanish.
right, right.
In Spanish, you have a distinction in the verb being. Estar means to be somewhere, and
Hmm.
ser means to be something, right? So
Right,
you
right.
you don't ask how are you in the sense of how are you essentially, like how is your being essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask that question. That's a weird thing. We ask like in a positional, like situational sense.
Right,
How are you, right? So you can have all these cultural things, cultural constructions, and then if I meet with people in the America, in the United States, or and then we are together long enough, we're gonna have a mixed, we're gonna have a composite, a new symbolic thing that's gonna occur between us, right? And you can do that with actual symbols, and you can have a very complex network. You can
yep,
have a very, 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 very highly complex network in which a symbol is never is never collapsed, right? Because you go,
right.
oh, let's say the cross. So the cross symbolizes up, down, side, right, and left. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you done it this way? Oh my God,
Yeah,
it's symbolizing north, east, west,
yeah,
south.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, how you put it this way? Oh, it means depth, and
Right,
so
right,
the symbol, because of its relational nature, is gonna enter into a very high complex system of relationality.
right,
Now, I'm not collapsing in the thing, because I'm rooting it in God. So I'm
right,
just saying, oh, by the way, these things are, there are anchor points in your perception, there are anchor points in culture, there are anchor
right.
points in ontology, and there's the anchor of anchors, which is God,
Right.
through
Well,
Christ, through Mary, through the
right.
sacrament,
It
blah
does.
blah.
It does collapse something. It collapses combinatorial explosion. And that's right. It collapses the mistake of science, because science is
Yeah,
making a mistake when
yeah,
it's trying. Like science is about dissection. Every time it talks about putting things together, the science fails. So I wanted to address Anselman's question, where I wanted you to address Anselman's question, right? What about cognition not dependent on phantasms, knowing God beyond images? That actually fundamentally makes no sense to me, Anselman, but
yeah.
I'll let Ignacio address it.
Yeah, because yeah. So the being united with God in essence, right? It means that everything you have, everything you are, is being informed by that, by God, or it's going beyond what we understand, but it's not going beyond your limitations as a creature. Even if this is something that is thrown off thrown into people's faces all the time. You know, like you see in like Orthodox against Catholics like debates. It's like you say that you can see the divine essence, right? And the beatific vision and all of that. It's like, yeah, you never lose your limitation as creature. There's never a losing distinction of the, you never cut that distinction. So
Right.
yes, I'm knowing God beyond my current capabilities. I'm uniting with God in a way that is beyond what I can understand right now. It's beyond the notion of physicality and blah blah blah. Yeah, that's a thing, but it's God is never gonna destroy that. That's why we believe in the resurrection of the body. So if we have a resurrection of the body, we're gonna be knowing God. All those things are gonna be aligned. My phantasm with God, with real, everything is gonna be aligned properly. I'm not gonna have bad habits in my imagination, for example. So because I'm gonna be glorified, deified, so that that doesn't happen to the degree that I have it now as a fallen creature. So it's not that we need to take out or without phantasms. Like no, you're always gonna have your phantasm. You know, you're
Right.
gonna be separated from it when you die, right? All your material senses are gonna be separated from you when you die because that's the cause. That's what happens with death. You know, it's an unnatural thing that we have to go through because of the fall,
Right.
and we're gonna have that separation. But we go back to like resurrection. You're gonna still have your internal senses. The only difference is that they're gonna be properly aligned to God if you're in heaven, right? But you don't. It's not a you don't need to think of it as a contradiction. You can be united with God beyond the notion of phantasm because
Right.
you can be united like the intellect is not the phantasm, right? So I in the image I showed
Right.
the intellectual aspect, which is in Greek we'll say the nous, right? Your intellect, your nous, the thing that can read between things in a spiritual
Right.
sense, you can be united through that, and that's not the phantasm. And
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
one key thing, one important thing is that you know that Jonathan says we don't go to heaven, you know, we don't go like somewhere. It's like we get separated. What is being separated? The thing that informs matter, the thing that organizes
Hmm.
matter,
Right.
goes away
Right.
from the matter. That's why the matter disintegrates because it's not being informed by that soul anymore. Now, where like location wise, where does it go? It goes into the spiritual realm. That's what we call heaven. It's not like it's going to the sky somewhere. It's going into that spiritual realm without being attached to that specific body. Like that's not a crazy thing, right?
Right. Right. No, I mean, I don't, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think people just get confused because I think basically people are trying to understand too much. And
Yeah,
again, the confusion with Vervaeke and Peugeot is that Peugeot is grounded in, rooted in, and starting from a creator and a creation. And when you say, all right, well, we all agree on that, which they never do, right? And then you start talking the way they're talking. Well, John would be wrong about everything, but that's a different problem. John would still be completely wrong. He's logically inconsistent. It's not that hard, guys. Even the AI can notice his contradictions all over the place. But also, like you don't know you're talking past one another because
yeah,
your baseline assumptions, your axiomatic assumptions, your first principles, your primordial presuppositions, which is a term John used. I I don't think I've mentally recovered since hearing that nonsense. That's such it's crazy talk, right? Like they're different. They're fundamentally different, and that I think is the key is that there's a fundamental difference of the meaning of things when you start in a different place, when your axiomatic assumptions are different, even if you try to get rid of them, as all good postmoderns do. And I'll note Like all these people are postmodern thinkers, right? One of the things Jonathan says in the talk is, John, I see we're both giving a talk on our white papers at the same university. I was like, why are you giving a talk on a white paper at a university, bro? I thought you like carved symbols and like felt the presence and importance of the symbol in the, like, he tells that story, right?
Yeah.
Like I thought that's what you were doing, and now you're submitting papers and giving talks.
One important thing is that the reason why I'm doing this work on anchoring things, the symbols in a clear Christian ontology, it's not because I'm trying to like collapse the symbolic reality, because I that's impossible. It's just it's a factual impossibility. I can't do that.
Right,
Like
right.
I'm never gonna be capable of that. That's it would like deny what a symbol is, right? So it's like a symbol is like a nod, right? It's like a nest nested on other nests, right? It's a thing that it's part of a part of another thing that it's also part of the same thing that is also part of an. It's like a highly relational thing.
Exactly.
I could never collapse a symbol. Nobody
Right. Well,
can.
it's a many to many relationship again, right? There's many ways in. There's many routes of travel or paths within it, right? They're not all valid though. And what
Yeah.
John does is he tries to make everything arbitrary. Now he wouldn't call it arbitrary, but it's interesting too. So one of the things the AI noticed that I want to point out, because I think you'll find this interesting. Number 2 on the list of contradictions was the Relata problem. This is what the AI called it. Can't explain what's actually relating. The AI saying this, man, not me, right? I mean, again, I noticed all this, right? Argues, quote, you can't get Relata out of relations, end quote, right? And then says relations are primary, right? But when pressed about what spirits actually are, he needs to reference concrete things, in other words, material things. I added that part, right? Cells, algorithms, communities, groups of people, right? If relations are truly primary, the question, relation of what, becomes unanswerable. Oh, and then nod to you. It says Ignacio's point. Because by this point, I had already fed it your video and said, what do you think of the critique? Here's a transcript of my buddy Ignacio. What do you think of his critique? And the AI's like, this is a very thoughtful critique. You know, you got to throw that stuff out. But like, it said, no, that's your primary critique right there. So that the AI noticed it. No, now the better question is, would the AI have noticed it if I hadn't put your critique video in there first? So that would be a fair test.
There's a conversation going in the comments, and I wanted to address something very simple.
Please.
A sign, it's just this.
Right. Thank you.
Something that points. That's it. It
It's an
comes from
idol.
an old. It
It's a
comes from an
flat.
old word that means like a trail. It's like a
Yeah.
trail that is between something and something. That's all. That's all it is. So
And it's an
of course,
instance. It's not
so
a symbol's
of,
not an instance.
but
Right.
the symbol can be thought of a sign by what it does, in the sense of like, oh yeah, it's related to these things. It's pointing to things. It can
Right.
be thought of
Signs
as
only point to one thing, though. That's the problem. A
sign.
sign points to one thing. A symbol cannot ever point to only one thing. It's a big
That
difference. It's a huge
the,
difference.
and this is why you need an ontological rooting of the symbol, because it's like, okay, this is signifying via what? How is it signifying anything? How is it pointing to anything?
Right.
And what is it pointing to? Is it pointing
Right.
to how many
Right.
things?
Right.
Like how many
This
things?
is so easy, right? You always can tell what any sign is pointing to. You can answer that question in 2 seconds. You can never answer that for symbol, because the
Yeah,
symbol's never pointing to one thing. It's not
no,
that hard. It's a many to many relationship, not a one to one relationship. That is the flat world. This one-to-one relationship, that's the age of gnosis, I call it, right?
Well,
That's
and
the flat world where everybody's misunderstanding because of
that,
John Vervaeke, propositional tyranny. That's correct. Because of the propositional tyranny, everyone doesn't understand the difference between sign and symbol. And symbol is so much more rich and so much larger and so much more important, right? And that's why they couldn't talk about spirit. Like, they didn't talk
no,
about spirit in this conversation
they,
at all.
they didn't at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me try to find a simple way of explaining it. It's very difficult because if you just say symbol, like how Jonathan explained, symbol is just how the many come into one. Well, the how of the many come into one is an ontological question, right?
Right.
So because the human soul and the human body, are united in one composite. That
Right.
multiplicity that became one came into being for very different reason than me writing it, like drawing a cross on a paper. So yeah, they are things coming together into one, symbol in the broadest sense of the term. They didn't occur in the same manner. So they are not anchored in the same things and in the same way and in the same, mode and degree. So you need to be able to distinguish them to not make those bold, generalized claims. The problem at the base of doing that very generalized thing is that you go into relativism.
Right. Exactly.
That I know maybe some people don't see it.
You get stuck there. You don't just go there, you get stuck there forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it, you need what is being united with what and how
Right.
and why. You need, like Aristotle, four causes. You
Yeah.
need the
Right.
material cause, the formal cause, the final cause, the efficient cause, and then you can be like make all the complex relations you want. Be as dynamic and big. Do your big physics, right? It's not metaphysics, it's big physics. Do your mega physics. Like, I'm not gonna do that because that's a crazy endeavor. Like trying to collapse the symbol, that's just insanity. But you need to be able to anchor it in specific things. This is why in the Bible, if you want to know what water means, like you want to know what is the symbol of water, it's like, well, you need to see all the instantiations of water and all the
Right.
ways in which water is related to all the other things. Well, you're gonna
Right.
find out pretty quickly that even though what water symbolizes is very big, it's very broad, there are certain things that are not symbolized by water.
Right.
Water
Right.
has a limit. What is the limit? It's an ontological limit. So there's a point in which you don't use water to symbolize something. You use fire because water
Right.
reaches its limit ontologically, you know, and then you need to go to the other thing that has a property that properly
Yeah.
symbolizes another set of things. This is why you need to root it in actual water, doing actual watery things, being clear, refreshing, uh, cleaning, hydrating,
Right.
creating rainbows when it's related with the sun and blah blah blah. But you can't give to water properties that are from fire. So you're not gonna
Right. Right.
symbolize something that should be
Yep.
put with fire. Like you have to be born of water and the spirit and fire, right? But they're not the same. There's a distinction.
Right.
You, if not, God, Christ would have said, if you're not born of earth if you're not born of air? And it's like, no, he was pretty clear. It was water first, and then the other aspect.
Yeah, and I think I think that goes to actually another point that Vervaeke sort of contradicted himself on, which is the again, this is the AI, man. This is hysterical how good it is at this. The view from nowhere contradiction critiques objectivity while making an objective claims. Right? He argues that the quote view from nowhere is logically and physically impossible, or definitionally would be a better term, by the way, claims we can't have a quote description that is complete and formally complete and consistent. Yeah. Okay, that's Gödel's incompleteness theorem, right? But then make sweeping universal claims about ontology, the nature of reality. Those are two different things here. Interesting. Emergence. Oh, what? No emanation, John? And what's really happening in consciousness research. And that's interesting to me, that even the AI can see exactly what you're talking about, right? Right in the transcript. There's no special tricks needed. You can just ask it, right? You can just feed it information and ask it questions, and it can just tell you, John's being ridiculous. This is silly talk. It's contradictory. And that's what happens when you end up in, we'll say, unchecked relativism.
Yeah, when you say it, at the core of all these things, when you say relation, you need to understand what that predicate means.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Oh, it's
Yeah.
just relation. Yeah, relation means some, at least, at the very least, one thing and another thing having some kind of connection.
Exactly.
It's,
Exactly.
it's
And
never one thing.
right.
Just
It's never
no.
one thing. And it's
It's
not a thing in and of itself. It doesn't exist without the other two things. And it
no.
implies a fourth thing, which is even more interesting. Everybody misses it. There must be a fourth thing, because where is this relation happening exactly? Where
Yeah.
are these objects exactly? And where is their connection exactly? Right? There's four things. So you can say relation all day long, but you have to be referencing four things. There's no
Yeah.
other way around it. John's only referencing one thing because he's doing the scientific reductionism trick, right? I don't even think he realizes it, but he is, right? And then he's ending up in relativism land using, we'll say, mostly correct Christian-y sounding concepts, right? Using quote secular language, and like they're not talking about the same thing at all. They're just flying right past one another in terms of conversation.
Yeah. But because I keep reading like people talking about relation, not under
Yeah.
or not understanding that to be in relation, you need something and something else. At
Well,
least.
and that's the key,
At
right?
least. Like at
Right.
the very least.
Relation. Right, but relation, you said it, to be in relation. Relation is a type of being. It's not an
Yeah.
object. It's not in materiality. It's a quality of being that, we'll say, exists as the result of, again, four
Yeah.
things, right? But the quality of that connection, this is so the misunderstanding or inability to understand this is what I call the intimacy crisis. You don't understand quality of relationship, right? Which implies you also don't understand relationship, because relationship is pure quality. There's no properties to a relationship. That's ridiculous. It's not that you can't talk about properties with relationship. Of course, you can always talk about properties. Who cares, right? That's a propositional tyranny, technically, right? But you can't understand relationship without quality. Otherwise, you will reduce it down and say, well, Frodo and Sam must have been gay, because how else could they have been related? You can't have a relationship without a physical material manifestation. And it's like, no, that's not how that
Now,
works at all.
now, one thing that I think, because the whole thing about like criticizing Aristotle and Aquinas and the Scholastic and all that nonsense, it needs to be addressed, something that happened after them, you know, something
Right.
that happened with the like all that came afterwards, like with the before even the enlightenment and all of that, you know. It's that the the heresy occurs when someone breaks the tension between distinction and relation, between the multiple and the one, between like when you choose one, because heresy means choosing. So when you choose
Mm.
one part, one aspect over the whole, you break everything apart. Everything breaks apart and it starts going one direction. So is it
Hmm.
bad for Aquinas to be very good at distinguishing? No. Can you be like hyper, like somebody that hyper distinguishes everything and can like see all the things? No, that's not
No.
evil, bad. It doesn't destroy symbolism, nothing. It's just showing you that you can distinguish things at very high levels.
Right.
That's it. Now, what happens with the person that goes, oh, so you know what's the most important thing? Distinction. Okay, then you have an issue,
Right.
because then you stop taking into account how those distinct are in relation. For
Right.
example, in Aquinas, you get, and this is the thing that in St. Thomas Aquinas he doesn't go like, this is the system and then shut up. Here, it's an open thing. It's an open
Right.
thing. He gave a bunch of aspects of reality, and you can keep adding. Like you don't have to stop
Right.
there. And
Right.
but this is the fun thing. In Aristotle, the only kind of relation that he had was accidental, right? Because he didn't have participation that you had that in the Neoplatonics and in Christian theology. The notion of participation, creation, you know, that creates what is understood now as a transcendental relation. But that transcendental relation is there in Aquinas. Because it's a relation via participation. So you're participating in the act of being of God. So you're related with God, right?
Hmm.
And then like through Christ and all of that, and then the
Right.
sacraments and all of these things, like you have a transcendental relation with God. So okay, you have the accidental relations that Aristotle found. Now you have a transcendental relation, which is not there in Aristotle. And then
Right.
he had, and then you have substantial relations in God because he's
Right.
Trinity. So
Right.
you have
Right.
substantial relations, transcendental relation, accidental relations. Now, what happened after the scholasticism is that people focused on just distinguishing and just the the one, just the one thing. What is the one thing? What is that? I just want
Right.
to know one thing. The one. So that, of course, led to atomism. You know, like focusing on like the smallest thing. You know,
Right.
individualism. It focused on like all the like mass. It's a hyper masculine move, right?
Yeah.
That
Objectivism. Yeah.
yeah, that did happen. Nationalism, all of those things came from that. You know, they came
Right.
from hyper focused on distinction.
Right.
But that's not, Aquinas didn't give you that. He gave you like a bunch of distinctions, and now the job of us is to make all the dynamic relations that come from that. And that's a
Right.
pretty fun thing. And it's a cool thing that we should have been doing,
Right.
you know.
Right. Well,
But
that's the process of discernment, right? Discernment, the ability to tell not only one thing from another, but where the boundaries are, right?
yeah,
And yeah, the boundaries we'll say aren't scientific. They aren't sharp and clear the way a lot of people seem to want them. Like I get that. That's a feature, not a bug, right? And that's where people get confused. They think, well, the boundaries should be clear and sharp, exactly the way science gives it to us. No, no, they shouldn't. And when you make that mistake or you make the opposite mistake, the same thing happens, which is you lose all the boundaries, right? Because if you make tight boundaries, people just slip through them and things slip through them. and then you can't hold them because they're too tight. And when you make loose boundaries, they disintegrate, and the next thing you know, I can identify as an Apache attack helicopter, and then
Yeah.
you have to call me, Mr. Jet or something. Like my pronouns are Mr. and Jet. How do you like me now? Those are my pronouns, Ignacio. Like, because it has to. Either one leads to that problem. The thing that solves that problem is discernment. And the way that you enact discernment without destroying the world is through the symbol, right? And because the
This is
symbol allows you to understand spirit, which is the thing they never talked about.
this is a really good question that I'm gonna say it in Spanish. Manuel uh, presents. Why are we supposed to do all these distinctions? Because we are going there as humans. So if this is what happens with why do we have councils in the church to clarify things? It's because we're going there. It's like
Right.
at one moment we didn't have to, and everything was fine
Yeah.
until it wasn't fine anymore. And
Right.
somebody was pushing some weird thing, and then you have to, okay, dude, I have to make this distinction, and then you add the distinction, and now we have that distinction. That's it. Like we just added a distinction. Cool.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then somebody else comes along, does another weird thing, and you're like, oh, dude, I didn't see that coming, right? So I'm gonna have to
Right.
make it this proper distinction to anchor things properly. That's
As we explore the world, right?
yeah,
We need to set new boundaries because the world expands as we explore. Now, you can always
and
make the argument that we
it's
shouldn't
like anchor
explore.
points. It's like
Right. You
flags.
always need
You
to
know?
re-anchor it. Right.
It's just placing certain flags on the terrain. It's like, oh, we have more terrain now. Like before, it was just my house.
Right.
Now it's thousands of acres. It's like, okay, you need like you need to like put a name to this place, to that thing, to. But it's just it's like putting a flag. It's not necessarily like destroying the thing. It's not like shooting down the hill. Like, no, you're just naming the hill. You recognize there's a hill over there. You put a name. That's it. You don't have to destroy it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Did you want to address his second thing here?
Why do we need to map these things? Is participation in there being not enough? Yeah, it's
Because
not
to me
enough.
that's the argument that won the day. Like that's the
Yeah,
gay pride parade. That's it.
yeah,
That's for
it's
Vakey, right?
yeah, yeah. Sadly, it's not enough. You know, and I say
Right.
sadly because the satanic impulse is precisely in the people that they find the loophole.
Yeah.
Think
The
about, for
exception.
example, I can give you the example with what's happening with the liturgy in the Catholic Church. I'm Catholic and I hate what's happening with the liturgy. But this is what happened, which nobody's addressing. What happened is this. The church says, guys, Latin is the language of the church. It must be preserved. Everybody's
Right.
like, great, great. Yeah, everybody agrees. Everybody agrees. Great. Unless there is great difficulty. Oh, why do you say that? Because there are places where there's great difficulty. There are situations where there's great difficulty for whatever reason. So we don't want to make worship an issue. So we have this possibility of uh, not being the main thing. Okay, great, great, right? Everything great. Then music, Gregorian chant is the model of all the sacred music in the liturgy,
Right.
and it
Right.
must be have pride of place in the first place among every other thing. This is written. I'm not inventing anything, unless unless it's a great difficulty. Blah 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 blah. Okay, and then you have all these different situations. The church is going like, this is the thing that we should do. You can have special permission. This is the one thing that we should do. you can have special permission. This is one thing we
Right.
should, and this done. It's great, right? So we
Yeah.
should just participate. It should be fine.
Right. Right.
Now you're like, dude, we're living in a time in which everybody asked for the permission.
Exactly.
So since everybody asked for the permission, we have crazy liturgical practices, very separate one from another. They mainly keep like the very essence of the thing, but they vary so much that sometimes it's just crazy because you have liturgies pretty much that keep
Right.
the one thing that is important, and on everything else it's just
Right.
nonsense. Okay, do we need to address that now? Are we going to have to address that now and map it properly? Yes, that's development, but that's not satanic. The satanic was in the people that were asking for the permission to avoid
Exactly.
the good thing. That's the
Right.
satanic impulse.
Well, and the other also people don't like. I at some point I'm going to do a video on scale on navigating patterns. I haven't gotten into it yet. Very hard subject to cover. Right. The problem is exceptions aren't an issue in small sets, right? Whatever it is, small groups, small sets of groups, it's not an issue. But what happens in a large enough set is that you get, we'd call them schisms probably, right? In Catholic land, right? You get these schisms where somebody goes, oh, I like the liturgy that this guy's doing. I think because I'm lazy or because I was under him or because I visited the church once, I'm going to try that, right? And that's not a problem unless it happens at scale. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. It's not a hard and fast rule, right? But then that can spread. And when it spreads, it gets its own momentum. That video is up on Navigating Patterns. It gets its own momentum. And now it takes on, quote, a life of its own. And this is where, when John and Jonathan were talking about autopoiesis, that, like, no. You guys are talking about momentum. You just don't use that word for whatever strange reason. It's a much better, more scientifically precise word, by the way. But whatever, you're talking about the momentum that happens as the result. Now, in this case, the force that causes it to happen is called mimicry. That's a Girardian concept, roughly speaking. I've got lots of problems with Girard, but man, he's talking about the two things that are most important to be discussed and no one's talking about. And even though he's not talking about them well and he's completely wrong, he is not entirely wrong about bringing them up and his formulation. So because we're not talking about things like mimicry, we think autopoiesis is some magical, Greek word fix for things with momentum and the fact that momentum at scale gains. It just gains, right? Like once you have 10 people doing it, another 10 people is easy to get. It's like that whole adage of, I don't know, making $3 million is easy. It's the first $1 million that's hard, right?
Look, this is really great. I'm really loving what Manuel is posting. That's really good. This is one of the things that I criticize about the pastoral way of behaving, right? So in the modern pastoral way of behaving is that is doing exactly what you're saying. It's like you dance the music that they are playing, right? So it's like, I don't know, you get the Reformation and you get the Counter Reformation. It's like we are not that, and that creates a whole another issue, because by being against something, you lose many of the things that you're for, right? But this has happened forever in the church from the very beginning. It's not even a thing in the West. This is from the very beginning. As soon as somebody goes like, "Oh, the Virgin Mary is the Christotokos, it's not Theotokos," it's like, isn't she both? Like, why why can't I say both? And then, because why can't I say both? Because Christotokos is now attached to a cultural, like, big notion of her not being the Theotokos. So it's like, dude, how do I deal with this issue that yeah, I need to be pro my thing, right? So I need to be pro orthodoxy, pro my ontology, and pro my participatory way of doing things. I should I should be pro that. I shouldn't be against whatever thing people throw at me, because then, like you said, it's like I'm gonna be following their framing. They frame me, and then I move according to their framing. But again, like, do you just say, I don't know, you have a bunch of heretics that start using Christotokos to mean something against the faith, and do you go, yes, she's Christotokos and Theotokos? Don't you think that would be a bit confusing for certain people, and so you need to do a clarifying and like all these things? So I think it's a dance. I don't think that responding to it is necessarily the diabolical move. I do think that you do get a bit into the dancing with their thing.
Right.
And this is why I think that we should also be just showing what who we are and what we
Mhm.
are, and being
Right.
more pro. But but again,
Right.
this person to person issue. For example, let's say in the Latin rite, we have Gregorian, we have Latin. I'm just giving you an example. We should be pro that and just stop being against people,
Right.
But many people don't want to defend that.
Right.
With the church, inside the church, you have
Right.
people that are hating Latin and hating um, Gregorian, and like, what do you do? I don't know. I don't have the answer. That's why
Right.
I think it's very difficult to be a pope or to be a bishop or to,
Right.
that's a very difficult thing to
Well,
be.
and that's the difference between defense and offense. It always confuses me. I'm like, and then Ignacio. I mean, it's a small sample size, but also every single person that doesn't understand the difference between defense and offense, doesn't understand identifying for versus identifying against, also doesn't understand sports. Like they're like, oh, I don't know much about sports. And I'm like, well, that's a really weird connection that you don't understand spirit and you don't understand identifying for and the difference between identifying against, and you don't engage in sports and you don't understand sports and you don't understand why people watch sports. It hones your skill of discernment of who's identifying against something, which is a bad thing, and who's identifying for something. And there's not never a time to identify against, but you want to do so from a starting position and a primary position, because it's both in
Yeah.
this case. It's not in all
So,
cases, not both. In this case,
so
it's
what?
both. Then you
Think,
can identify against.
think of right now. So I did all this mapping. I don't like doing this. I was fine without doing it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was really fine with just me, my wife, and kids, and just doing my thing. I'm an acrobat, so I'm a physical guy. I do things, and I
Right.
do martial arts. So I'm like, I didn't want to go there, but the more I kept listening to the people that I like speak, the more I saw that there's an issue. They are not realizing they are pushing the thing they say they hate. It's like, how Jonathan Pajot always says that the perennialists didn't see that they were helping the New Age movement.
Right.
They didn't see it because
Yep.
they
They
were
didn't.
defending traditional practices. They were like,
Right.
dude, we should focus on tradition and traditional practices.
Right.
But how did they do this? By going into symbolism.
Right.
Okay, they went into symbolism. Through symbolism, in the vague way, in a very vague way, they made a bunch of assertions. They were like,
Hmm.
dude, we
Hmm.
see a cross in Islam, we see a cross in Christianity, we see a cross in Buddhism, we see a cross in the Toltecayotl, we see a cross in
Yeah.
Hinduism.
Yeah.
Dude, it must be that there is a perennial religion that runs through everything, that is a meta religion. It's
Right.
a mega hyper religion
Mega religion. Yeah.
that's beyond all the religions. I want to go there. That's what Sean said. That's the mentality of
Right.
Genon. It's like, I want to do that thing because you know what? And this is like Genon understanding. You know what we should do? We should understand that the people that don't know about this thing, they are the exoterics. So they are the outsiders. They see
Right.
religion by the external forms only.
Right.
We, the people that are initiated, the people that know the secrets and the mysteries, we are esoteric, so we know the things within it. Okay,
Right.
you, out of symbolism used in a vague sense, you got this weird hyper religion, meta religion, mega religion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then they attached to that. Through that, they defended traditional practices. They even defended the traditional Latin mass and all that. And but but they also defended the New Age principles
Right.
without realizing it. They didn't want
Well,
it.
they didn't. They
They,
yeah, they weren't
they,
looking at principle because they weren't able to see principles. And that's
yeah,
that's it. Like the people with principles assume everybody has them, right? Like Jonathan Peugeot assumes everybody's starting from the creation and understands
yeah,
emanation and all that, and they don't, right? And
yeah.
so they're like presuming all these things. Like everybody understands principle, and then you can see who's principled and who's not in their actions, right? It's not in their speech, but it's in their actions. Did you want to sort of address this? What Manuel's saying here? It's kind of
If
a
we're
mess.
talking about union having a body, it's not unified. What are you preserving? I get that being a tyrant is not the answer, but preserving something that's not, there might be worse. Well, it's that we're dealing with God. Like we should chill
Yeah.
out. This is one of the key things that I think I wanted to make with my mapping. It's
Mm,
God. God is in my mapping.
right.
So there's an aspect which is, yeah, and what I mapped about God is what was revealed to me. I'm
Mm,
not I'm not claiming I understand any of that. Like, I'm not saying that I grasp like the most holy trinity. No, I just wrote the dogmas and the things and I put it in a map. Now,
yeah.
if God has a church, you know, if he himself came here and he was like, you, like, I'm changing your name to be this one other new thing, and now you are gonna be the one that whose faith is not gonna fail. So I'm praying, me, God, I'm praying for you. Like, God is praying for the faith of Peter to not fail. It's not gonna fail. It's God praying for him. So, and then I see the whole pattern of how it's played out, like relationally, and it's like, okay, the mapping of Catholicism, it's the
Right.
more, it's the one that fits the most, even with Jonathan Pajot's understanding of symbolism. It just fits. Like, you
Mhm,
have
mhm.
the one that is by essence, the one that is by participation. Which one is like mimicking, you know, which one is participating in this reality the most hierarchically? Well, it's the Catholic Church. Then I just accept that. That's it.
Right.
So why is God using weak people like us, and why is he allowing for the church to suffer much and to go into great despair? I have no idea. I'm not going to
Yeah.
claim to know that, and I'm not gonna try to. I'm not gonna try to like grasp it. And it's my faith. Like, there's a point in which this is important. So we're talking about God at the high. Like, we're talking about God, and we're talking about faith. Like, there's a limit in the conversation. There's a point in which somebody's gonna be like, "Yeah, I believe in the Allah of the Quran," and I'm gonna be like, "Okay, like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna pray for you, you know." Or some
Right.
Catholics gonna be like, "Yeah, I don't like Latin and I don't like Gregorian and I actually hate it and I don't want to ever do it." And it's like, yeah, well, the magisterium is not teaching that, and you're doing that. What can I do? I can pray for you, you know. And we have clear clear understandings of how the thing is supposed to look. We just don't follow it. You know?
Handsome and faithful laity are used by God in spite of aberrations in hierarchs. Yeah, well, I'll just refer you to this wonderful little dog-headed book. The dog-headed have noticed that the roaches have hedged in the church. I know it's not a very Catholic church. That's fair. But it's all the it's the church, right? It's meant to represent all of the churches, even the uh, sort of Gnostic, heretical, pagan cults that people refer to as Christianity.
Oh, and
But the Anglo-Catholics have it no better. So,
and one thing that it's important about like substance ontology, and like without going into substantialism or essentialism, to know the essence of a thing allows you to know when the thing is dying, when is it good, when is it bad.
right.
Like
Right.
the church, you know that, like, what are the essentials? Is it okay? Consecration. Like there are very things that are canonical that you can't change anywhere, you know? But you have certain things that are like the most basic essential thing that has to be there.
Right.
And and that's why you can never say like, oh, like that mass is invalid. Well, if it did have the very essential thing, it's not invalid. But is
Right.
it problematic? Yeah, it can be very problematic. And
Right.
actually, this is one of the things that the traditionalists don't get. The problem is never when people go like sedevacantists and stuff like that. It's like, no, dude,
Right.
you didn't get it. It's not that it's invalid. The problem is that it is valid. That's the problem, because
Right. Right.
being valid, people are transgressing it. So that's
Right.
worse. If you're transgressing an invalid thing, who cares? Like, oh, he's transgressing that fake thing. Who cares?
What about the changing of the Lord's words in the Mass?
Yeah, that
The
happened.
Mass
That
isn't
happened with.
about it isn't about that though. So not for Anglo-Catholics generally.
But it did happen with translations.
Of course
With
it
the,
did. I mean, that's why it's not about the word. Like this is the propositional tyranny. Oh, you
yeah.
change the words. Who cares? The words are tyrannizing you because language
Well,
changes over time. So you can't do that.
well, the word and yeah. To be fair to that, everybody changes the words because because
Yeah.
because the Lord didn't speak in Spanish at that
Right.
moment in time.
Or
Like,
Latin. He's not
or
even a
Latin.
Latin speaker. Or Greek. What's going on? This is right. So, which tyranny would you like? Would you like the Latin tyranny, the Greek tyranny, the English tyranny, the Spanish? What do you mean? Change the words? It doesn't mean anything. The question is the symbol coming through correctly? Because we're limited by words in that. Now, you framed it as words. It's like the word, like I keep trying to explain this to people. The reason why you actually want a Latin Mass is because you can't understand it. And you
Yeah.
shouldn't. The whole point is to focus you on the participation and away from the damn thinky talky garbage. I know I have a YouTube channel, whatever. I wrote a book. It's fine, right? This is still garbage compared to the participation, right? If I fly
Yeah.
down to Chile, right, Ignacio and I are going to share a meal. That's going to be meaningful. We might not talk at all,
Yeah.
which I know everybody's like, Ignacio not talk. Mark's certainly never going to not talk. That's nonsense. I not talk all the time. I save all my talking for the YouTube, right? So that would be more meaningful, more important, and more impactful. It's the participation that matters. Maybe the words help. Hopefully, the words help. They're there to help anchor your brain, right? But maybe too much word understanding or literacy. I have a video on literacy versus comprehension. That's an important one. That got a huge number of almost 500 views so far. That maybe that's the reason why the words are there, is to help you along, but they're not the thing, right? It's not,
Yeah.
because words are a sign, not a symbol. That's why you can't talk about symbols very well. And spirit is the same thing. And that was the mistake, or one of the many mistakes I think that the conversation that spawned all this had, was they couldn't really talk about spirit. They couldn't talk about symbol very well. And they failed. They really failed to get across their points. Like, I failed to follow what it was they were agreeing on. I think Jonathan pushed back like maybe twice. And I was like, man, I would have pushed back on every single thing John said, right? Because either he said it wrong and he had a point, or the stuff he said was just contradictory and inconsistent to the point where even an AI can find it.
Yeah, yeah, but like I said, it's not that simple. The only reason why I wanted to talk with Mark is because I see this problem. Like, science in the dust is like saying that this would be laughed at. Dude, do you see the conversation between John and Jonathan? What do
Yeah,
you think? What do you
exactly.
think? What do you think a saint would think of that conversation?
Right,
It's nothing, you know. And
right,
they're getting thousands of views, thousands of people being
right,
educated by things that are horrible. Maybe I have the worst sacramentology. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe, like, that's most likely, you know. But I'm well aware that what they're speaking about and what they were saying at that talk, it's not the Christian understanding of reality. It's not the traditional classical understanding of
right.
reality. Um, so it's like, like, okay, you can hate on whatever I'm doing. You can be like, yeah, Ignacio doesn't know, like, whatever, sacraments and words and things and languages. And yeah, maybe I don't know anything, but I'm quite sure that anybody that says that things in relation are just relations in relations that are really, it never speaks of
Right,
the what is it of the
right.
things in relation. I think that's very dangerous. Maybe I'm wrong
Yeah.
on
No, it
saying
is.
what is it, right?
Right,
Maybe I'm giving you the wrong distinction of the thing, but I'm giving you a distinction so I can actually relate things.
right,
Jonathan speaks of heaven and earth. Jonathan speaks of, he gives you different things that are distinct, God and
right,
creature, unlimited and limited. He gives you distinctions. So
right,
he can make relations. Maybe are not the best relations, maybe are not the best distinctions, but he's giving you both things at the same time.
right,
John is not. John
right,
is saying we have these distinctions that are called relata, and they are nothing. And those nothingness are
yep,
relating. And you're like, what is
right,
relating with what?
right. Well, then people don't notice. It's interesting, Ignacio. So maybe within the past week or week and a half or something, Nassim Taleb. I love Nassim Taleb. Half his Twitter's garbage, but all of his books are great, right? He said one of the biggest problems that we have is we can't discover circular reasoning. Like, people can't figure out when people are doing circular reasoning. You want circular reasoning? That particular conversation is just
Yeah,
John Vervaeke using circular reasoning. He's using parasitic, self-referential language to describe something, but you can't describe something by talking about the thing in and of itself. And
yeah.
again, even the
And
AI, which he apparently now
he
worships,
creates, yeah,
points this out.
and he creates a hyper language, right? So it's like
Right, right,
just a
yep,
mix of things. So it's like, oh, you
right,
have trans, and you have objective, and then you have subjective. So you have transjective. It's just putting things together. Now,
well,
Anselman said, God is the
no one's
word.
talking about the transjective, so John's very upset, and it's a made up word, John. That's why. Which one? This one?
No, the other one. He said God is the word. He inspired words to translate many to
Nice.
many in different language. Yeah, but the thing is that the
God
words
is
in the languages, the words in the languages shift meaning.
right. They shift
That's why
definition. They shift.
that's why
Right.
we
They
have
shift. Right.
yeah, that's why we have the study of etymology,
Right.
because words in within a living body of people, they
Right.
change. The word symbol,
Right.
sometimes people get like hate on the word symbol being used for different things. Like, yeah, because it wasn't. it changed the meaning. Right now, we're trying to recover one of the old meanings. But right now, if you say symbol, people don't think of a composite. People think of a sign
Right.
because the conception of the word means something else. So
Right.
it, it's we are limited creatures. So yeah, God is the word, but we are participating in that in a limited manner. We're not. We can't grasp the wholeness of the word in us. You know, and nobody, only the Holy Virgin Mary was able to carry the logos, the word, and give birth to the word. We are not that. We're not going to give birth to the word. We're gonna give birth to concepts, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
give, after that we're gonna give birth to very shitty words, to explain those concepts, and
Right.
that's gonna change. That's why the church defends Latin, precisely because it's a dead language, because it's not changing anymore. It's like it died. Nobody's using it in the sense that it's not shifting. Okay, so
Right.
let's use that one. And for some reason, divine providence, God Himself wanted to have that be one of the languages in the tool of our redemption, the cross. So I think there is something important about Greek, Hebrew, and Latin, that we should take into account. But one of the reasons that it's like people want to defend the use of Latin is precisely because it died, and whatever the word mean, that's what's gonna mean forever. So
Yeah.
pro means like towards something, or pointing to something, or ad, means the same kind of thing, like towards something. Like, okay,
Right.
then ad and pro, they're just gonna mean that always.
Right. Right. Well, and the different words have different distinctions. Don't all languages distinguish all from many? Antoine, the issue is, where do you want to start with this? Because we have to go all the way back, and you can't do the translations. You personally cannot do the translation. So if the church decides this is the correct way to go, then the church decides, what are you going to do? Like, you're not better than the distributed cognition. Like John talks about distributed cognition, has no idea the implications. That means that the Holy Roman Catholic Church is the smartest organization and institution that has ever
Well,
existed.
in the
What
official,
they say
no,
goes, and it's not to say they're perfect, because they're still made up of people who happen to not be perfect, and they're still in a world that is not perfect. But the alternative doesn't exist. So
but to that point that as someone's trying to make, it's that's why the official mass is written in Latin, and it says
right,
pro multis,
right,
pro vobis et pro multis. That's what it says, and it has never said anything different. So from the
right,
core of the church, that has never changed. where
right,
where does the change happen? In the particular places
right,
in which the people, this is what I'm criticizing.
right.
It's in particular places that people do these weird satanic things,
Right.
you know
But Anselman, who changed? Did the English change? Because the Latin didn't. So, standing from the perspective of a Roman liturgist,
yeah,
since the Latin never changed, the thing that changed was not the Latin. They didn't backtrack on anything. They
yeah,
switched which English word, maybe. Maybe they shouldn't use the English translation, and then you don't need them. That would be fantastic, right?
yeah,
This is why the Latin Mass is defensible. You don't run in this problem, never manifests. And the
yeah.
fact that experts don't stay stable over time and language doesn't stay stable over time means you can't determine whose fault it is. Are the experts correct and the language has moved and you didn't notice?
I
Or is
was,
it the other way around? I don't know.
you
Who
know, you
cares?
know, one of the my friend Sebastian, he's in the Discord. He translated the book Language of Creation to Spanish.
Never heard of it. Oh, this book. Never mind. We did a book club on
and
that. 40 episodes.
and like how many words and how many things were not, like, we were not able to translate them properly. We
Right.
had to choose
Right.
certain things and just be like, okay, let's just keep it like that. Now imagine if you add to that bad intention people, people with bad theology. So of
Right.
course we did have that issue, not everywhere, but in some places in which people did make that bad translation
Right.
because of bad, because they had bad theology, right? So you mix people with bad intentions, bad theology, and then they are tasked with translating. Dude,
Right.
they can make some damage.
You
And
give
they
you
did.
give them authority, right, and then you
Yeah.
do some damage. Like, but Anselm's just stuck in the propositional tyranny again. Your age of gnosis. This is the problem with the age of gnosis, Anselm. Just grab a mirror, go age of gnosis. There you go. Like, meaning is not in words. Words do not ever, have never, and will never contain meaning. Meaning
Yeah.
emerges from content, which is definition, plus context. And that's why language changes, because the context of our existence changes. And so all the English words will say in the 1550s. So from the 1550s to the 1650s, a bunch of people injected a bunch of words into, like, words like consciousness, right? They just
Yeah.
injected these words into the language. Now, what's consciousness? I'll tell you exactly what consciousness is. It's a Cudworth. Cudworth is just a complete unknown bad guy in the destruction of thought, actually, right? And consciousness is saying, the important part of the soul is contained in the brain, and it's science now. That's all they're doing. That's why you will never find a definition of consciousness ever. They will never get one, because they're taking part of the concept of soul, locating it entirely in the brain. And then you go, what's the age of gnosis, Mark? I don't know. That's part of it, though, man. Locating soul in the brain, or part of soul in the brain, and then cutting it off from the rest of soul and labeling it consciousness. That there's so many crimes there that somebody should go to prison, and yet no one has yet been imprisoned for using that term. I would put them all in jail immediately. It's
but but
ridiculous term.
but you see that one of the things, because I am acknowledging what Anselma is saying, but what we're
Yeah, yeah,
missing here, we're missing the point of, like, again, why is it that I rooted my whole
right,
system in God? It's because you can't you can't just be like, oh, those masses were invalid, thus what,
right.
all those people went to hell, like,
Yeah.
no, that's not
The
how it works.
words move. Anselm, the words change and they move.
No,
Your
but
point is invalid because
but
the world changes, language changes. So yes, it's important, but they're a moving target. This is you're
yeah,
missing the fact of
but
entropy.
but he's
Change.
but he's pointing at a factual thing that actually happened, and I
Right,
want to I
right.
want to like, I want to honor that. I don't want
Yeah,
to just
sure.
brush it off. The
But he's
My
making
point,
a judgment on it, Ignacio. He's
yeah,
making the judgment that it's wrong. And my point is, you're not in a position to make the judgment that it's wrong. It might be wrong, but you're not in the position to make that judgment. That's
yeah,
the difference.
my position is that, again, we need to make proper distinctions.
Yeah,
Being by essence, so being self-subsisting
yeah,
God, and being by participation makes the whole difference. So
yeah,
being by participation means that you are limited. You have a limitation. You can't grasp it all. You can make it all. And
right,
if you are
right,
sinful, so if you have a sinful tendency, which we all do because of original sin, we all have that tendency
yeah,
to be misaligned with God,
right,
right? So God is sending the right signal, to put, like, in modern, very modern terms. He's sending the right signal. We are crooked and we can get it wrong. And God
exactly.
can allow for some parts of the church to suffer, like a kind of death, and pass through some, which I believe we're going through,
Right,
to go through some kind of mystical death, you know,
Right.
and he can still be doing the salvation thing he does all the time in
Right.
extraordinary ways, So
Well,
yeah, the
well,
mass was invalid. For example, let's say a mass was invalid because the proper words were not said. Okay, so they were not signifying what the Lord wanted to signify. Bad theology, everything bad, and the sacrament didn't occur. God didn't
right.
come to that host, and
Right. Right.
let's give that a, like, okay, that's a thing.
Sure.
Now, it's the unbounded God trapped in the words, and he's trapped in the sacrament, and he's trapped like as if we are like clamping him down so he
Right.
cannot do anything at that moment. Like he could
Right.
not save
Right.
all the people that went to that mass, even the priest that was just being obedient, you know. This is why the line of the subsidiarity model of
Right.
reality, it places the guilt on the authority, not
Exactly.
not on the
Exactly.
obedient person. I'm just being,
Exactly.
I'm just going to church. Somebody mistranslated it. I'm just doing the thing.
Exactly.
Then who's gonna be guilty of that? Who's gonna receive the biggest punishment?
Right. Well, like I want to make a couple points here. God wouldn't hold the ignorant guilty. No, 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 no. God wouldn't hold even if you're not ignorant, he wouldn't hold you as guilty for submitting to the authority, right?
Yeah,
What happens is, and I think you've alluded to this
yeah,
rather
yeah,
well, Ignacio,
yeah. Grace can
the
overrule.
church, the church takes on the responsibility, right? Of course, but it's not about grace. It's about hierarchy, right? If you have a group of people and they're following a leader and the leader screws up, it's the leader's responsibility, not the group's. It's not to say the group has no responsibility, or we'll say each of the persons in the group has no responsibility, but they might not. They might not, right? And that's not even a function of ignorance. It can be a function of ignorance. It can be a function of stupidity. It can be a function of, I don't have another church to go to. So I have to go to this schismatic church and hold my covenant the best I can in a group, because you can't do it by yourself. It's bigger than you. This isn't that hard, right? Everybody, all right, do by yourself, start a home church. You can't do that, right? Like that's a no. And so
No,
you have to have something hold you together, and that has to take responsibility for mistakes, even if they're not the mistakes at that level. The thing at the higher level takes all the responsibility for all the mistakes below to the best of
yeah,
its ability.
and it's and if we go into that into that realm, nobody's safe.
Right.
For example,
Right.
let's say that the Lord said that what was united by God is in this, you can't dissolve it. Then why do you have certain churches that are apostolic churches saying that you can divorce and remarry 3 times? Are they changing the words of the Lord? Are they changing the meaning? Maybe you can change the words, but they're changing the meaning, and then they're gonna say economy.
Right.
What is economy? It's pastoral, right? The prudence of a particular situation, you know, having high regard for the salvation of soul, you allow for certain things to
Right.
occur.
Right.
Okay, so but you
Right.
can say economy. I cannot say pastoral. We can,
Right.
it's you don't have to get trapped there. But
Right.
to go back to the main thing is that is that this video of uh, Jonathan and John and Sam, they were not able to state what a spirit is.
Right.
They were not able to state what a relata is
Right.
specifically, nature of the relata, the subject of the relata, the reality of the relata. Like none of that was stated, you know. Uh,
Right. But they did state, like, even the AI has this right. Distinction and relation as co-equal. And I was just like, no, distinction and relation aren't co-equal. First of
The,
all, co-equal doesn't make any sense in the English language. Like now you're not speaking proper English. Like you've got English completely wrong. They're not equal. They're not co-equal. They're not kind of equal. They're not equal someday. They're not equal in another. Like, there's no equal between distinction and relation. Like, no. Where did we get
the,
that garbage from?
I would say, because I agree with the notion of you can't put one above the other,
Right.
but
Right.
they're complementary.
You need both. But
You
that
need
doesn't
both.
see needing both doesn't make something equal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that's not how math works. That's
No,
not
because
how equality works. Right. Like
equal means sameness, and that's not
exactly.
the relation and distinction are
Yeah.
precisely not equal.
Right. Now, but it's not even that they're not equal, it's that they're not the same in any way, shape, or form, except if you adopt a frame above them and you're looking down on them and you're
Yeah,
saying they are in the same layer of reality, or you're saying they're in the same layer of analysis. That's what Jordan Peterson uses, or they're at the same layer, right, of grammar, right, or they're talking about the same layer of existence.
and
Sure,
yeah,
they're
I think that's
equal then, kind of.
I think it's above everybody's paycheck to say that.
Right,
That's why
right.
When Aquinas speaks of like the one, he puts that first. He does it because of because that's the discipline of the intellect.
Yes,
That's how you do it. Like you speak of the one thing, and
that's
then
right.
you relate
That's right.
them.
Right,
That's why he does it, but it's not that
right.
he's doing it because he thinks he's not seeing that reality from above, and then being like,
But that's
this
the
is very
difference.
important.
Right, but that's the difference, right? The scientists speak from a thing I call objective material reality, and they use that superior in their mind position. It's a non-existent position, but whatever. They use that position to cast judgment on everything and then say this is that and that is this and this is good and that's bad, right? And all these things are equal. And it's like you can't make the statement that those things are equal. I outlined how they could be considered equal. The problem is you and I can't do that because we require both distinction and relation, and
Yeah,
we are not above them.
we can say that for us they are equally important, but
Sure,
not
in
yeah,
importance, right, right. But see, science can't deal with equal importance, right?
yeah.
Because
There's
what
no
to
hierarchy.
them that means it's the same thing. It's just equal. It's like no, equal importance means that they are both required for something else, right, or for maybe many other things.
And they are required for each other to even be a thing.
Exactly.
Like
Well, because you need
if
contrast
you
to
don't have
see.
distinction, you can't say what is
Right.
in relation. If you don't have relations, what are you distinguishing? Like
Right.
between
Right.
what are you distinguishing? But that just shows a limitation on our side, and that's why
Right.
God reveals Himself in that specific way, and that's all we know. We reach a roof, and that's it. Like we got revelation of the most holy Trinity, and like that's it.
Good night, Anselm. Good to see you. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's the real problem is that these people are speaking above their pay grade. They're
yes,
looking up at something without realizing they're looking up. They're trying to judge it as though they live in objective material reality. And they're using this language to try to own and control and understand things that are
yes,
bigger than them by their own admission, right? And they just don't understand the inherent contradiction in what they're trying to do, which is technically a performative contradiction, contrary to what people might tell you. The word performance should be a hint as to what a performative contradiction is, but apparently nobody knows what the word performance means, so they've relabeled performative contradiction. I know Anselman's going to bed. Ignacio, do you want to wrap this up? I know this is a long
yeah, yeah,
time for
yeah.
the stream.
Yeah. It's just add God into the equation, and add limitation on our part, and that
Mm.
that would be like an answer to many things, even what Manuel just said. uh we there's a limit to words.
Yeah, exactly.
Just there
Exactly.
is, you know.
Right.
That's why, like, people many times ask me, when they want to understand, like Saint Thomas Aquinas, for example, they ask questions like, what is the soul? And it's like, well, he uses the term soul in many ways. So which
Right.
way? Are you
Uh-huh.
speaking about soul as the whole human? Are you speaking about soul meaning the heart, like will? Are you
Yeah,
speaking
yeah.
about the soul meaning the intellect? Are you speaking about the soul being the form of the body? Are you speaking about the soul? Because he uses the word soul for all of those things, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
because when you're speaking of such high things, words are not enough. Words just
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly.
like are trying to cling into something that is too much. It's That's why I say that words point to concept. The concepts are grasping that reality much
Right.
better, because
Right.
they're related with your actual capacity to interact with reality spiritually, right? And God can infuse knowledge from above. So let's say you don't grasp, let's say like a somebody that had a vision of heaven. I don't know. They're not doing the whole process that I explained earlier. They're not like
Right.
touching reality, grasping it with the internal senses, and then going up and abstracting reality. That's not what's
Right.
happening. God is
Right. Right.
directly to their intellects infusing a knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what they do is that they try to translate into images and words what they were given in a different mode. That's why they like, oh, I saw a, I don't know, like a bull in a lion in a thing, and it's like,
Right.
what are you talking about? It's like, well, I don't have any other way to to talk about this
Right.
one thing that was given to me from above
Right.
this realm. So
Right.
if you add limitation and unlimitation on the part of God, we should chill out a bit. You know, we should like chill out with it, trying to map it all, and that's why my mapping goes to God, to be like, dude, there's an aspect that is just beyond us. Okay, just have that in mind.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, and a lot of what I talk about on navigating patterns is around this and understanding these limitations, right? Because freedom right now seems to refer to freedom from constraint and consequence, right? And you know, everybody who's playing the scientific game or this quote secular game, that's all scientific reductionism. That's all propositional tyranny. To give John his due, that's a brilliant idea. It took me a long time to understand how it was correct and how it was maybe not quite correct. But I think I've done a reasonable job of that, right? And that's elsewhere on the channel too, right? But ultimately, when you're trapped in that game, you're not going to see the limitation because science doesn't recognize a limitation. These people, not all scientists or anything, but almost all of them at this point, not in the 1930s, by the way. You can look this up, right? 1930s, it was very, very different. You could look up some of the polls, right? Einstein said God does not play dice with the universe. Like he was clearly a believer, right? In something higher that was controlling things and not using random numbers, right? Or semi-random numbers, however you want to think of it. But he clearly, 100% clearly was not of the stripe of a scientist today, right? They are taking a superior position. And very clearly, and in this conversation, John said it right up front in the first like 10 minutes, like, oh no, I'm going to use ontology and understand all of this. But he means little o ontology, categorization, right? Because, yeah, if you're using big O ontology, that means you've already assented to God as the ineffable source of being, having
Yeah,
manifested a creation, right? Having created, right?
yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. You can use that to understand the world. That's really easy. I just call that religion, by the way. But you can call it whatever you want. It's all referring to the same thing at that point. But that's not what John's doing. What he's doing, and this is why there are 12 contradictions in the talk, according to John's beautiful AI that's so wicked smart, in the talk that John makes, just in John's side. I didn't do Sam's contradiction, and I didn't do any for Peugeot because I still like Peugeot. So I don't like what he did here. But like, they don't have an objective material reality superior position to judge these things and categorize them, and that's why they end up in relational hell and with self-reference and circular references, right? Because they don't.
I have revelation. Yeah, I have revelation, and I access that through faith. So
Right.
I'm very clear that it's not of my capabilities that I'm like what Manuel is saying here. It's like, yeah, when I say certain things are equal, like for example, I say the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are like equal in glory, for example. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I don't know.
To us, they are equal in glory, right? We can't know if they convey contribute equal glory.
But I don't really know what that means. I am accepting that by faith and by knowing, like, oh, it means that there's no separation. It means they're not composition. It means he's not a creature. It means he's not a kind of being. Like, that's all apophatic. That's all. It's not what you think, kind of thing. It's all telling me, by the way, this one God, it's nothing about, like, it's not like whatever you've seen. It's beyond all of that. That's all it's telling me. But that's not. It doesn't mean that I'm like grasping it. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally understand what it means to be the same in substance and be relational. You know, I don't like. I just accept that by faith. You know, I try, and I just repeat it because the church gave it to me. But the scientific mind that he's saying it because he thinks he thought the thing, you know, like I thought this thought, and
when they're using it to dissect the world instead of using it to accept the world, right? You're using it to accept the world, not dissect the world, and that's the fundamental difference. And I think that, you know, Jonathan, for all his wonderful qualities, when you fall into the game of writing white papers and trying to explain in secular language these concepts to people, you've already fallen down the rabbit hole. I mean, this is why I don't like apologetics. I think it's a bad game. Everybody who does it is bad at it, first of all, because they're not like, you're never going to beat a scientist at the science game, right? It's never going to happen for you, right? Because they're playing a very limited game with very limited tools, and they're very good at it. And you don't understand their tools, right? You have better tools, right? And where they seem to cross over, you're not understanding that they don't cross over, right? You're just saying, oh, they're the same. They're not the same. And that's why they never could discuss spirit. I think you could discuss spirit. I think it's technically possible, right? But it would be very kind of wooey and sort of like unsatisfying in some ways.
It would be wooey. It would be very wooey to every scientist.
Right, because you wouldn't be very sciencey, and we're living in the age of gnosis, where knowledge as propositions is the highest value. And I can't give you propositions about spirit. I can give you propositions that kind of outline some small aspect of spirit.
Because everything you say about spirit can be explained through material means, precisely by making bigger connections.
Exactly. But then you lose resolution, right?
But you miss the point of what a spirit is.
Right. And they don't get that. They don't understand scale. It's like, well, yeah, you can describe it using bigger abstractions, because that's technically it's an abstraction, right?
Bigger relations. For example, you can say a forest. So a tree, you have a tree, and then many trees are acting like one forest, right?
Right.
Somebody like Jonathan is going to say, oh, because there's the angel of the forest, for example, or the principality of the forest. I get it. Like, I'm going to say yes to that, because of course there must be an angel protecting the whole thing. The scientist is going to say, yeah, I'm not going to put this angel part of it, because I can explain it through fungus and mycelium and like all these big connections. I
See,
don't need.
those are all part of the hyper object, Ignacio, obviously.
It's a
Right.
hyper object that emerged from all these relations. And
Right.
then Jonathan says, "Oh, that's the spirit." It's like, no,
No. It's the
no,
difference between emergence and emanation. And they
yeah,
all think John knows what emanation is. But
yeah,
John
no,
has never explained his idea of emanation, not once. If
no,
you listen carefully, he'll say, oh, yeah, emanation, definitely important. And then he'll go right back to emergence
no, because
immediately.
he would have to accept act.
Yep.
You have to accept the notion of cause as an spiritual act, and then
Final cause. He has to accept final cause, right? But to accept final cause,
yeah,
you have to go all the way back to the creation. In other words, this is a problem of starting points. When you do not start from the creation, the only thing Ken Ham got right. The only thing he got right, when you do not start, when you do not drag people back all the way to the creation,
yeah,
right back to the beginning, then you're not working from the same framework. And you
yeah,
can use the same words and they will mean completely different things because meaning is contextual. And if the context and the starting point can always determines the context, if the context isn't the same, you're not saying the same thing, even though you
yeah.
think you are.
And you know what? You know what's funny? What's funny is that many people hate. They hate on the later scholastic movements that they say like it's the decadent scholastic movement because they were asking about how many angels can fit in the
Head
you
of a
know
pin. Yeah.
in the head of a pin, and that's not a stupid question
No, it's not.
because precisely like it's what Manuel is saying is correct. The spirit is also in time, but what
Right.
people like John are gonna say is there's no the spirit. You're calling what you're calling a spirit, it's actually an emergent property of a hyper object that is
Right.
multi-layered in relationality. You
It
call it
can be
an,
explained,
yeah,
right?
you call it an
Explained
angel.
through emergence.
But the thing is that the notion of how many angels can fit on the head of a pin precisely explains what is the problem with John's understanding. Is
Exactly.
infinite. You can have infinite angels in the head of a pin, in the head of a pin. Why? Because it's another realm. It's spirit. You're not getting it. It's spirit. It's
Right.
other realm. It's not hyper relationality of material things. It's a
Exactly.
thing that it's beyond matter, that it's informing matter, but it's beyond matter. It's metaphysics. It's matter. You know, it's beyond
Right.
the thing. So that's
Outside
why,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, that's why that whole conversation is not, it's not reaching where maybe Jonathan thinks it's reaching.
Yeah,
So
it's not doing the bridging that he claimed in the beginning that he likes
no,
about John's work. And,
no,
look, I was in that community. I worked with the Verveke Foundation for a year. It went absolutely nowhere. And I know they got new guys now and whatever, but like the, those people will not cooperate with themselves and others. They're not going to like join the symbolic world and go to
no,
church. And that's
it's just
never going
another,
to happen.
it's another form of like kind of like a pseudo religion. That's all it is. It's a
Right.
bypass.
Ritnar, he never gave up the Ritnar project, right? He's admitted now that it's a contradiction, right? Which means he abandoned a bunch of his followers by saying that. Oh, it was a contradiction. And yeah, fine, fair enough. It was, John. We tried to warn you, by the way. Manuel and I specifically tried to warn you about this years ago, right? Like, don't go down this road. This isn't good, right? Once we saw it, we didn't see it right away, but like all he's doing is all of his work is enabling more Gnostic heretical pagan cults to exist. And I don't think Jonathan understands that he's lending that credence by having these discussions in that way.
That's a good thing. Manuel said something. I agree. Oh, this is great. This is great because this
We
is
don't
so
like
good.
the word meta, just to let you
No,
know.
this
I
is so good.
despise that
This
word.
is so good because it's precisely showing. I think it was Manuel himself that he was like, we are answering. We're answering to the things that they are placing on us. But
Right.
this is what's happening. The word
Right.
meta means beyond. So it means supra. in a way.
Right. Right.
But since now the word meta, it's being used to mean mega or hyper,
Right.
then then
Right.
I would be with you, on board with you, to respond by using the word supra,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that's why we use the word supernatural.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna go. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
above nature. But
Right.
but the scientific, they're never gonna say supernatural.
No, they've reinvented all these terms to avoid using the existing terms that have a better, more clear definition and history and tradition behind them. That's where you get egregore. Egregore is an occult word. Like
But it
when they started using that word, I just started laughing because I'd studied the occult and I was like, well, I know where that word comes from. You guys are nuts. You're just adopting pagan heretical terms, and invoking demons and seances. Like, what are you doing?
but it's a I like the word egregore because it's showing that that using symbol
Yeah.
like the term symbol to mean just things coming into unity.
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
the things coming into unity are just egregores,
Right. Right.
and that's just a weird mixture of thoughts and angels and influences and culture. Like it's just a mush that it's
It's what
oh,
we see.
yeah,
Right. It's what we see of a bunch of actually random events, right?
yeah.
That are having an influence of some kind that we can't identify.
It's like the more complex version of seeing faces in the clouds.
Right. Right. And when you don't have a discernment of the difference between seeing faces in the clouds and the spirit of the city, that's when everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right, but they go, no, egregore, and there's an egregore that runs the city, and then
Chimera. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right,
Chimera.
Jordan
That's
Hall's like,
that's
we
another
need an
word. Yeah.
egregore of our own, and I'm like, you don't make an egregore from down below, you don't control it from down below. That's not an option. Like, why do you think this is a good way to think about the world? This makes
Yeah.
no sense.
The word chimera or egregore, they're similar. The
Yeah,
idea is just
right.
you can say monster, you can say dragon. It's
Dragon,
just
yeah,
mix identities and mix uh,
hybrids.
subjects,
They're hybrids. Yeah.
hybrids. Yeah,
Yeah, they're hybrids. So and Peugeot talks about the hybrids too, and we talk about the dog-headed. We've got the little dog-headed books, right? They're coming. The dog-headed are coming with metal. That's happening. So yeah, I mean, and this is what this is. Like the
yeah.
dog-headed are coming with metal, and
Bruce
I
is
thought
correct. It, it's
Sally
an
Joe
old
did a
pattern.
good job with that. Yeah, this is an old pattern emerging again.
Yeah,
Right, and it's all emergence. It's all more pagan nonsense emergence, and I think that's the fundamental problem with it. Um, it, 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 it there's no reason to be in this mess, though. Right, this is just
yeah,
rebellion and lack of submission.
yeah. And that's why I'm working on this project, which is very painful because, like, imagine you saw the last image of that graph,
Yeah,
like going through all of that. It's very painful, but I think um it's necessary at this moment in time, that we are being so hyper relational
right.
to bring a bit of clarity so that these weird monsters, like I'm not gonna use the term egregore or chimera or anything or hybrid. They're just monsters.
They're just monsters.
Nephilim. They're Nephilim. They're giants. They're monsters. They're like, we are so full of them that
Right,
we need some clarity in relationality.
right.
That
Well,
so
yeah, it was painful watching that silly video too. It was like in
so
so many
for,
ways.
for everybody to know, I was the one who made Mark watch it.
You did. You did. It was horrible. Yeah. And the link is in the description, guys. So you can check it out there, although I don't recommend it. And
I'm
the, and
I'm
the,
gonna be heading. I'm gonna be heading out now. So
all right, my friend. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm glad
thank you very much.
that you took the time and the work.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It was pretty fun to talk with everybody on the comments, and good comments, good everything. We might not agree,
Anytime.
but it was lovely.
Anytime, my friend. Anytime.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it. Have a
God
good
bless
night.
you. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye-bye. Yeah, so just this was Ignacio's idea, by the way. And like and subscribe, all that stuff. I've got plenty of material that covers all this already. We saw this coming 4.5 years ago. None of this stuff is new. Um, and you know, it's it's really difficult to watch these people blow up like this. And we're seeing a lot of that, whether it's Tim Pool running into a wall, or Carl Benjamin, Sagan Makad running into a wall, or whoever. They're all running into the same walls, right? They're all running into the same walls. And Vervaeke, for me, is very personal. He was a teacher. He was my teacher, right? Among others, right? I wasn't the only one, right? I built the community around the meditation series, and I lost my teacher. And I'm still pretty pissed about it, actually. I'm very unhappy about it. I did my best. I tried to work with the Vervaeke Foundation for a year. It didn't work. And so, I've got this YouTube channel. I've started talking about these things in, we'll say, more healthy ways, and try to give you a sense for what kind of conversations to have and what kind of conversations to avoid, because you're just going to get lost in the rabbit hole like these guys are. And unfortunately, Dr. Peterson's in the same boat. He's gotten lost down these rabbit holes. They're all running into these walls. They're running into the limitations of their frameworks. It's not just them, it's nearly everybody, because we're stuck in this age of gnosis, where propositions are the highest value and propositions are knowledge. And it's really hard to watch, right? Because you see it coming and it's painful. And when you have these ecumenical conversations, or this attempt to bridge the secular language and with religious concepts, that's not even what's happening. It's not. You're just talking past one another and validating their ability to start new Gnostic, heretical, pagan cults. And that's sad to watch, and it's dangerous, and I don't like it. And no one's drawing boundaries. And I hope to have more of these types of discussions. If you would like to have a discussion, you can reach out to me on the Market Wisdom Discord server, or you can get in touch with me through the channel, or in the comments, or whatever. Like I said, like and subscribe. The channel is trying to grow a little bit more here. I finally got the Rumble live streams working, so hopefully I'll be doing Rumble stuff more often now. But I have a ton of material, and it's all around the same stuff. Like, we were with Vervaeke for years, right? Trying to understand this stuff and work out what was good and what was bad. And this is just more of the same. And we're just out in front of all this stuff. Hopefully not in front of all of it, but we're out in front of a lot of it, having seen it coming down the pike. So I want everybody to focus on one thing, right? Because the goal here is for everyone to be better, right? Because the world needs you to be better, right? And in you being better makes the world better. That's it. You don't need to solve the Israeli-Palestine conflict, or Israel-Iran, or Ukraine and Russia, right? You can just make yourself better and not worry about those things that are far away. Hopefully they're far away for you. If they're not, then maybe you do need to deal with them. Come to the US. It's safer here. But you don't need to do all that. You can just make yourself better, and that'll make the world better. And that's what you need to focus on. If you need help with that, the way to get help with that, roughly speaking, is a religion. And if you believe you do not have a religion, one will be given to you without your knowledge or consent. So choose carefully, and don't choose the Vervaeke religions, please, or any derivative of them. Have a good night, everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments as well, because that helps boost the video engagement. If you want to have a conversation, I'm fairly available. And just be better. Take care of each other, right? And take care of yourself, because you can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself.